Morning, everyone. We are live to YouTube.
Thank you, Manush. Good morning. My name is Brian Winters, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee. The committee secretary has confirmed that we have quorum, so I will call meeting 15 of the Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee to order. Welcome, everyone. This meeting is being held using the city's WebEx technology, with members and staff connecting by video conference or by calling in. Because we are meeting remotely, we ask for your patience with any delays and technical issues, and we have no registered speakers today. The public can watch the meeting streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. And I would like to remind all staff and presenters to keep their mics muted with their video turned off unless they need to address the committee. This will make it easier for the co-chairs and those watching along on YouTube to observe members as they participate in the debate and vote on each item. Members, please keep your mics muted unless you wish to question staff or speak to an item, and ensure that your video is, we want the videos turned on. Sorry for misspeaking a moment ago. Please keep your videos on. As part of each agenda item, we will ask members to raise their hand or unmute their mic if they wish to question staff or speak. We will then create a speakers list and will call on members when it is their turn to speak. When voting on an item or a motion, I ask that members ensure that they turn on their video and raise their hand to indicate their vote. Members, I want to remind you that although you are participating remotely, you must submit your motions in writing to the committee secretary. The clerk's staff are available by email at aaac@toronto.ca to help with motions. To start off the meeting in the right way, we will now have the offering by Selena Young, Director, Indigenous Affairs Office, to be followed by an opening blessing by Francis Sanderson. When you're ready, Selena.
Mercy, thank you, Brian. Today, the medicine that I'm going to light and offer to call in ancestors to be with us and sit with us in a good way, and to help us talk with kindness and respect. The medicines that I have today were gifted to me by a good friend. They were picked in the Okanagan in BC, and I'm sharing them today with you. And Eskimo, I will keep the medicines burning for us this morning.
Thank you, Selena. When you're ready, Francis.
Thank you. Thank you, Selena. I can almost feel the smoke. I can smell it. And it sets us in the right place for this meeting. First of all, I'd like you all to take the time to reflect on the highs and even the lows that we've encountered over the past year. Celebrate the growth that we've made, our resilience, our strength, and the blessings that perhaps you sometimes overlook when you're rushing around and looking after your business. And last but not least, this is the time of year to let go of what doesn't serve you, so you can make space for the positive road ahead in 2022. It's the new year is the time to settle the past and get ready for new possibilities, new friendships, and a deeper connection to the world around us. We all have the power to create a world where we're better and more connected, and it all starts within ourselves and within our community. It's a time when we can carve out time and space to reflect, grow, and always give back. Remember, we must also show and care and our compassion to our relatives who are less fortunate, who are living in less than ideal situations, who are grieving or struggling with their most basic needs. Remember Mother Earth and our non-human relations. Remember those who are suffering injustices in different places of the city and different corners of the province and right across this Turtle Island. And remember the generations that have come before and those who will come after. That's where our strength should come from. At this time, I'd like to welcome all the new members. It's exciting, it's trying, it's confusing, but it's rewarding. We're all here to work together. So at this time, I'd like to call on the grandfathers and the grandmothers of the four directions to come into our virtual circle to guide us, help us, and support us as we work towards making things better for all those under our care. We ask that these grandmothers and grandfathers give us the strength, give us the creativity, give us the intelligence to listen well to everyone in the circle, to see the good in each one of us, and to do things with a passion. We ask them to help us to be kind, caring, understanding, but most of all, respectful of each other. Help us to make wise choices and help us to do it with a passion so that those who are yet to come will have something that we created that will be sustaining. So for all these things, Creator, we say miigwech, chimigwech.
Nakwamik. Thank you, Francis and Selena. Although we are in different locations and meeting remotely today, the Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee acknowledges the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse nations, Inuit and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Before we get to our agenda this morning, we would like to acknowledge and welcome newly appointed members to this committee. We do have a very full agenda today, but in an Indigenous spirit and way, I want to make sure that we do get to know one another before we get started. So I'm going to ask each member of the committee to give a brief 10, 20-second introduction of yourself so we all know who we're working with. After giving your introduction, please identify who you would like to go next so you can pick on people. I'll go first, to be fair. My name is Brian Winters. I'm with a company called Small Economy Works, and we operate a suite of programs in the territories for educating young Indigenous youth and empowering them. I'm of Inuk and Irish Newfoundland settler descent, originally from Happy Valley Goose Bay, Labrador, but I've lived in Toronto for going on 5 years now. And I'm going to call on my fellow expatriate from out east, Leonard Benoit. Leonard, when you're ready.
Thanks, Brian. Gray Delusi Esquawiko Baptism. So what I've said is, hello, my name is Circling Wolf. Leonard Benoit is the tax name that I pay taxes on. I am Alibu Mi'kmaq, and I come from the territory of Newfoundland and Labrador. I work as the Indigenous Patient Navigator with the Toronto Regional Cancer Care Program. My office is currently located at UHN, in which I sit on the Indigenous Health Program there. By profession, I've been a nurse for 20-something years. I am a certified death doula. I hold certificates in palliative care, finishing off a study in death studies. So I'm a lot of fun at the parties because I'll ask you, what's your plan when you die? I'm going to toss it over to Cynthia.
Ani bojo bim squani bishquageni dishnakas among dodem. Mumpi shikem nisingeni donjaba. Chajajabonagi pagnagome shkunaganing shinkade wikwamkong unseated in your reserve. Hello everyone, I'm Cynthia Bell Clayton, English. My real name is Turning Leaf. I believe I'm from Turtle Island. And back in the day, they put us on reservations, and our reservation, the reservation I come from, is the Wapumakong Unceded Indian Reserve. I'm of the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi peoples. I've been in Toronto for going on 11 years come September, and I brought with me 3 beautiful children, Ocean, Wyatt, and Memingwa. And I'm now the executive director for Eshkinigik Nandweachigegmik Abishkabinjabaing, also known as Inagbi Indigenous Youth Agency. I'm glad to see everyone here this morning, and I'm very honored to be a part of this advisory to support community and our aspirations for our future. Miigwech. Oh, I have to pick somebody. Isaac.
Good everybody. My name is Isaac Crosby. I come from the Ojibwe Aboriginal from southwestern Ontario. If you guys don't know about us, we're a small group of people who are still around, who people are calling, they call us Afro-Indigenous, but we call ourselves the darker hue of the Native Nation, because we're the ones that took in the runaway slaves back in the 1800s, mixed, married, and mingled, and produced people that look like me and lighter skin and the whole kit and caboodle. I work at Evergreen Brickworks. So if you've ever been to Evergreen Brickworks and you've seen any of their Indigenous gardens there, that's me. I'm also now their horticultural lead, and I also work at University of Toronto doing their Indigenous gardens there as well. I look forward to being on this committee and look forward to meeting everyone either virtually or in person when I get that chance. So I'm just going to say hello and thank you for everything. I'm going to pass it off to Christine.
Hi everyone. Mamashka will be Indigenous Makwa Dodam Toronto and Donjaba. I give thanks to everyone here and give thanks for this good day. I'd like to say that I'm really thankful and honored to join you today and to be with this group that serves our people, and give thanks for that. And thank you to every person for their good thoughts today. For by way of introduction, I'm Christine. I'm born and raised in Toronto. My reserve community is Chiging First Nation in the island. So I have like a background in Indigenous studies. I work in Indigenous education and research and some consulting, and also in the community. I worked in various community agencies for about 10 years. And since I was a teenager, and then sort of, continued to be part of the community and work in the community. And then I guess something more recently in the past 4 years, in regards to traditional healing, Jake Agone, who is a traditional healer, he actually asked me if I would like to work in traditional healing, and he referred me to a job as a traditional healer in a traditional healing program. And I've been doing it for about 4 years. And then I started to do some work in the Toronto Birth Center and the 7th generation midwives and some private practice. So that's one thing that I'll share. And then some other things. I think that's all that I want to share. I am really grateful, to be on the committee and join you. I guess one other thing that I wanted to share was a couple years ago, the Canadian Senate had this, they have this annual event called Indigenize the Senate. And I went as one of the youth to sort of tour the parliament and give expert testimony to the Senate committee. And so I represented a lot of experiences I've seen and felt and held, and conveyed those at that event. And so that was an honor as well. And so just to give thanks for being here, and very grateful for the work that we'll do and continue to do. So miigwech.
Just a reminder, if people could keep it quick, that would be appreciated. And Christine, who are you gonna pick?
I'm gonna pick Sage. Are you a new member, Sage?
I am, yes. Hi, Christine, and hi, everyone else. My name is Sage McMahon. My pronouns are she, her. I'm from Treaty 3 Territories, Rainy River First Nations, and I'm the manager at Two Spirited People of the First Nations. I will pick Pamela.
Thanks, Sage. I'm one of the co-chairs with Brian. My name is Pamela. I am the ED with Native Women's Resource Center of Toronto. I'm super excited to see everyone's new faces and our old members joining us today. I am from Georgina Island, Muskrat Clan. I'm a mom of one little boy, and just happy to share this space with all of you. I'm going to pass it over to Nora. Welcome, Nora.
I'm honored to join this committee, and I'll share a little bit about myself. I'm from Mississauga First Nation. That's my home community. My spirit name is Spring Water Spirit Woman, and I belong to the Eagle and Condor clan. I'm a mother of 2 children, Jessica and John Carlo, and I've been working for the federal government for over, I'd say, 19 years. In 3 different departments, and right now I'm in Environment and Climate Change Canada. I look forward to working with all of you, and thank you again.
You want to pick someone to go next, Nora?
I can't see names on here, sorry. I don't know the names. Everybody's.
That's okay. How about you go, Steve?
Thank you.
Bonjour, So Steve Teakins, I'm from Nipissing First Nation. Been in Toronto since 1995, and I'm one of the old members of the committee, I guess. And welcome to the new folks. My day job is I work at NAMI Native Men's Residence. I'm the executive director there. I know in response to COVID, we've in addition to offering the existing services we currently offer to community for homeless folks, we also are one of the primary partners in operating a Doje Minona Sewanang, our Indigenous COVID testing center and vaccine center. So pleasure to meet the new folks, and I look forward to working with you on this committee. I'll pass it over to Tanya.
Say Tanshe Kiski Etamoan Esqueo, Kendasawan Kwa Indishnakas. My name is Knowledge Woman Tanya Sank. I am Métis Cree Soto, known as the Three Sister Nations, and with a long lineage to the Red River Métis and ancestral ties to Cowessess First Nation, and so Treaty 4. And I live in Toronto. I was born in Toronto. I was raised out west, came back. And happy to be on this committee. Also seasoned as Steve, and welcome to the new members. And I look forward to meeting everybody. I am the System Superintendent with Indigenous Education for the Toronto District School Board. So welcome, and looking forward to this meeting today. Take care. I will.
Would you like to go next, Tanya?
I will go to Suzanne.
Anzi, bonjour. My name is Suzanne Brunel, and I'm Métis with Menominee, French, and Irish ancestral roots. I'm the senator of the Toronto York Region Métis Council, and really feeling very positive this morning, seeing all the new faces and mindful that it's a new year. And I think we're going to continue doing a lot of good things together. So welcome everyone. And I missed some of the introductions, Brian, because I had to log off. I was hearing double and it was driving me crazy. So I may be picking somebody who's already introduced themselves. Did Francis, have you introduced yourself?
No, but I will now.
Thank you.
Ani, Beyonce West Dijakash, Jijak Dodem, Mowaskin Gandunjba. I'm Frances Anderson. I'm the executive director of Anishinaabe Homes here in the city, in the GTA, because we do go from Brampton to Oshawa. It's my pleasure to have been on the Aboriginal Affairs Committee for, let's say, 20 years. So I am what Steve calls seasoned, and I'm marinated, and I'm well done. And welcome to all the new people. It's good to see some fresh faces. Good morning. I think I want to call on Patty Pettigrew.
Gray, I'm Patty Pettigrew. Thank you, Francis. I'm a member of the Algonquins of Pikwakanagan First Nation, and I'm a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother. I am the founder and executive director of Thunder Woman Healing Lodge Society, Redwich. Oh, and I have to pick someone. Oh dear. I don't know who else is new on here.
It doesn't matter if they're new or they've been here for a while.
Okay.
We're
I'm
just
going to
all
pick
introducing.
Ruth. Okay, I'll pick Ruth.
I'm not surprised, Patty. Ruth Nonyos, Hodoshona Yogongwe. Hi, my name is Ruth Green. I am a professor in the School of Social Work. I run the undergrad social work program at York University. I've been on this committee for probably about 2-3 years, maybe 3 years. Yeah, as I said, I'm Haudenosaunee. I identify strongly as urban Indigenous. I am, my home community is Six Nations, but I'm a Bill C-31, so, family was not allowed to be raised on the res. Yeah, I don't know who else has been. Can somebody who has not introduced themselves put up their hand, and I'll pick you, and then it'll make life easy? Well. Also, I have 2 kids at home, so they'll pop in and out, and I never apologize for my children because as an Indigenous Ista, I never apologize for my babies interrupting my meetings. And Chris has indicated that they have not introduced. Oh, I forgot to use she, her pronouns, please. So, Nyawa. Go ahead, Chris.
Hey, everybody. Good to virtually meet everybody. Chris LaFive. I'm originally from Matagami First Nation, Northeastern Ontario. Currently, I head up the business development for the Mississaugas of the Credit Business Corporation. So the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations ECDEV arm. So happy to be part of the committee. Looking forward to seeing what we can accomplish. Oh, and as Gary went, Gary Medema.
Gary is city staff.
Oh, okay. Well, let's try again. Big Catherine Dean, probably staff as well.
Only cameras on.
Okay, I'm going through it. Who hasn't gone? I'm trying to.
I'll go next and put put my
getting harder.
out of the misery and put yourself out of the misery. It's a bit like,
thank you.
It's a bit like when you're in kindergarten and they're picking teams, right? I don't want to be the last person to be picked here. So my name is Angus Palmer, and I'm the general manager of Wigwaman, which is an Indigenous housing corporation here in the city of Toronto. I've worked here for 24 years, and I think Mike Layton is on this committee, and he should introduce himself as well. Thank you.
Does that mean I get picked last, Angus? Is this you picking me last?
No, I think there are others, Mike. I just wanted to make sure you weren't picked last.
Okay. There is a line about saving the best for something. I don't know. Mike Layton, I'm the city councillor for University Rosedale, Ward 11 for the city of Toronto. I am on this committee by virtue of appointment from city council. My family are settlers to Canada, and it goes back a ways. I'm related to multiple fathers of confederation, so as you can appreciate, there's a significant amount of reconciliation I would like to contribute to the City of Toronto government and other levels of government, as is my obligation. I will say in 2010, when I was elected, and then Mayor Rob Ford decided to do away with the community advisory committees like this one. I was one of a handful of troublemakers that helped reestablish the committee, and I believe that Mr. Ford thought it was perhaps putting more work on me to come on to this committee, so I was appointed. Perhaps he was doing it as a punishment. He didn't realize that he was perhaps doing me the greatest service, because I have found my last 11 years on the committee to be both rewarding as well as enlightening and uplifting. And so I thank you all for that. I think I've made some friends on this committee along the way. At least I like to think of it that way. And I look forward to contributing however I can in the future, the future role Toronto plays and this committee plays in giving advice to City Council. And I will always do my best to help advance that. Thank you, Miigwech. And I'm not sure Larry has gone. Larry, have you gone?
I haven't, Mike, but I'll go next. Thank you. Thanks, Mike, for that. I want to say welcome to the new members. And I'm semi-retired from the Native Canadian Center, where I was there for executive director for 17 years. And I'm Ojibwe from Surf River First Nations, and I'm a Bear Clan. I've been on the advisory committee almost from the beginning, as Steve has indicated. But I want to conclude with saying I'm a very happy and positive Ojibwe. Miigwech, thank you.
And I don't think Andrea has gone yet.
Yamko, we're having some technical difficulties, but we have some hotspots we're able to connect up. So really nice, really happy to see everybody, or those who I can see, and to welcome the new members. And I'm Yot Douglas. My name in English is Andrea Christian. I'm of the Ohokwali clan, which is Bear, from Onondaga, which is Oneida and part of the Haudenosaunee, and also we refer to ourselves as Ongwahomwe. I've been a part of Toronto since the 60s, and have watched and supported so many of the agencies in our community who have come and migrated to the city and seeing the development. So I'm really happy to see that a number of our family members from different areas within our communities have joined, and look forward to working with those former and those newer. Yeah.
And I should have been checking people off on the list. I haven't. I don't think Tristan has gone yet, and I don't know about anyone else. Please volunteer yourself if you haven't. Go ahead, Tristan.
Ani, Anjebe ne Queen Indigenous Shawanaga Indonjaba Ojibwe Minwa Dene Koi and Down Nekachinandam Nango. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tristan Snyder. My Anishinaabe name is Changing in Flight Woman. I come from the community of Shawanaga First Nation Ojibwe territory, which is roughly 2.5 hours north of Toronto, Ontario. I'm really excited and eager to work with each and every one of you. I look forward to this path forward with each of you together. And the way I like to look at it is each of you are teachers here, for myself. I like to see myself as a young person. I'm only 25. I've only been within the city for about 3 months now. But for myself, my daytime job, I am the Indigenous Community Engagement Manager with Elevate. So it's a national non-for-profit tech and innovation company located here in downtown Toronto. And the last thing I would like to share too, for the past 10 years, I have been involved in various levels of trilateral levels with the province to First Nation government and working with First Nations youth. So I look forward to working with each and every one of you today. So I'll pass it back over to Brian. Thank you.
So I'm scanning through. I don't think Jeff Schiffer or Nancy Martin have gone yet. Correct me if I'm wrong, folks.
I've not gone. I can slide in there real quick if you like, Brian. Just been listening to all the introductions. When we do this, I'm always so glad that we started in an Indigenous way, because you get to know all the phenomenal gifts that are coming together in this circle. I'm feeling hopeful and rejuvenated, and just really looking forward to our conversations moving forward as a committee. So my name is Jeff Schiffer. I was born and raised in Coast Salish territory in what is today Vancouver. I've been living in Toronto for about 4.5 years now. Started at the city, was working with the Indigenous Affairs Office, and for the last almost 4 years have been the Executive Director at Native Child and Family Services of Toronto. Many ancestors, German, Russian, French, Métis, connected to the Turcotte and Piquet families. Passionate advocate for kids, have a family that was impacted by the 60s scoop and child welfare. Father gifted with 2 phenomenal tornado children, 2 boys who keep me on my toes every day. And really looking forward to our work together. Miigwech.
Good morning, I'm Nancy Martin. I'm the Executive Director of Miswaybeak Aboriginal Employment and Training. I'm Mohawk from Six Nations. I was born and raised in Toronto. I'm looking forward to working with you as a group to advance the agenda of the Indigenous community here in Toronto. Thank you.
Nakamik, and if I'm not mistaken, I think that's everyone. Please put your hand up if I am. I legitimately, my face hurts right now from smiling so hard. I'm so excited to see so many optimistic and varied individuals. It's a great group. So back to the task at hand. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you have an interest, please raise your hand or unmute your mic to let me know. Seeing none, may I have a motion to confirm the minutes from our last committee meeting on October 22nd, 2021? I see Francis Sanderson. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. We will now proceed to consider the 8 items on the agenda. And our first item is item AA 15.1, public appointments to the committee. This is a letter from the city clerk placed on the agenda as a formal information on new members appointed to the committee. The item is for information only. Do I have a motion to receive the item? I see Suzanne Brunel. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Pam, if you want to take over at this point, that would be great.
Thanks, Brian. So the next few items are key informational items to walk us through the table, some of the processes, some of the logistics of how this table operates. I know some old members were, sorry, let's not use old members. I know some existing members were looking for this type of information, and it will be very useful for oncoming new members. So our first item is public appointments overview and roles of committee members. And Matthew Cowley, Administrator, Public Appointments Secretariat, City Clerk's Office, will give a presentation to the committee. And Matthew, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pamela. Good morning, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you for sharing your time and energy with me. My name is Matthew Cowley. I work in something called the Public Appointments Secretariat in the City Clerk's Office. For those of you who I haven't met before, basically what we are is a small team of staff who do outreach and recruitment for dozens of different city boards and committees and tribunals, quasi-judicial tribunals. So we work with dozens of different committees to go out to the public to find folks like yourself who are interested in joining these boards and committees. And then we work with council and different nominating panels to help sort of administer the selection process to get people into these positions. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to share my screen in a minute, and I'm going to just go through a presentation that has some sort of high level information for those of you. I think those of you who are new to the committee, hopefully there will be some helpful information there. And as Pamela, you said a minute ago, for those of you who have been on the committee for a while, there might be some refreshers here. And the one real takeaway that I want to emphasize is that myself and all the other staff who support this committee, we are here to help you in your journey as committee members. So if you have questions at any point, you are welcome to reach out to us at any time. If it's a question about how the committee functions or a question about your term of office or anything like that, we are here to help. So can everyone see my slide now? Is that
We can.
Jonathan, you can? Okay, thanks. I have two screens, and one has my notes and one has the slides. So I want to make sure you're seeing the right thing so it makes sense for all of you. Okay, thanks very much for that confirmation. So I'll try and keep this brief, and there's other colleagues following me who will fill in some more pieces of the puzzle. But again, thanks very much for having me. The introductions were really incredible and very humbling to hear. So it's fantastic to think about all the amazing energy brought to this committee. So what I want to talk about is a little bit about this thing that we call public appointments. So I work in a thing called the Public Appointments Secretariat, which might be sort of an odd name for what we do. And the Aboriginal Affairs Committee is something that we as staff call a council advisory body. And my colleague Shanali is going to talk a little bit more what that means in a few minutes. But basically, what I want to just talk about here is obviously you are now all members of this very important committee. And when we talk about public appointment, that's a whole process where people like myself go out and do recruitment, and we help people become aware of these opportunities. And then there's a process, and there's different sort of selection processes depending on the board or committee that's at hand. And but ultimately, the appointments are considered by City Council, and City Council then can in this case confirmed the 10 new members and said you are the new members of the Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee. So that's why we use this phrase public appointment. But what does it mean in practice? I'm going to talk about that a little bit. So anyone who's appointed by council to a board or a committee or anything like that, you have a term of office or a term of appointment. So for council advisory bodies, the members are appointed, those terms on the committee match up with the term of City Council. So those of you on the committee today, you have a term of office which ends November 14th of this year. That is also, of course, the end of the current term of City Council, and that's consistent with other council advisory bodies. So that's not just a rule that's being applied to this one. And a lot of the work that I do in my office is guided by this thing called the Public Appointments Policy, which has been adopted by City Council. And there are some guidelines in there which are relevant to your work here. And one of the things they mention in that policy is that you can only be appointed by City Council to serve on one board or committee or tribunal at a time. So we have many other opportunities, and if anyone is ever interested about those, we are here to answer those questions. But as current members of the Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee, you can't also be on, say, the Board of Health at the same time, just as an example. There's a few basic eligibility things just to bear in mind. I don't think it really impacts anyone here, but to be appointed to a city committee, you need to be a resident of Toronto. You can't be an employee of the city. You also can't be related to a member of City Council. And so that's just some basic eligibility criteria. The committee, again, you'll hear about this more in a minute, but as I think you all know now, the committee has 25 members on it, all members of the public with the exception of the one member of City Council, who of course we know is Councillor Mike Layton. And some recent changes to the composition, with the exception of the member of City Council. The committee members are either representatives of Aboriginal organizations or are committee members or members of the community at large. And that was something that was changed following a discussion at this committee. That was something that was changed by City Council in the fall. And here we are today. So that is stuff that is set out in what's called the terms of reference. And again, you'll hear a little bit more about that technical governance stuff from Shanali in a few minutes. So your meetings, like the meetings today, the committee typically meets 6 times a year. There can be additional meetings at the call of the co-chairs. The meetings are held in public. It's great. These are public meetings, and this is one way the city, engages with the public at large, is by having these public meetings. They are held on weekdays, of course. Historically, the meetings have been held at City Hall, but as you all know, we're doing all this stuff remotely for now. One of the things that's important in the public appointments policy is there are some expectations for attendance. We recognize that everyone here has busy lives. Things come up. Sometimes you are juggling work or family, or you're just not feeling well or whatever. If you can't attend a meeting, we just ask that you notify either the co-chairs or the committee secretary, like Jonathan, in advance, and then the committee can pass a motion to excuse the absence. If there are extended absences without any news from you, without any notice to say, hey, I'm sorry, I can't make the meeting today, something's come up, then that can impact your position on the committee. But otherwise, if you send your regrets, even that morning, that's fine. That's understandable. And that way we just, the co-chairs and the other committee members will sort of have a sense of who's going to be there or not. And the other thing is, of course, there are a number of items on each agenda. Those are published typically a week in advance. And the expectation is that members have hopefully squeezed in some time to look at some of those agenda items, and they're ready to discuss the items on the agenda. Something else that's relatively new for members of, again, what we call council advisory bodies is there is an honoraria for attending meetings. This is one way to try and help recognize the important work that people bring to the table, the lived experience, the knowledge, the perspectives, and the important sort of community liaison role that people play. So with the council advisory bodies, it's an honorarium of $125 per meeting attended for up to 6 meetings. So if this committee had many additional meetings that were special meetings, for example, that were scheduled beyond the number of 6, the rules adopted by council say you get paid up to the number of regularly scheduled meetings. Now, the honoraria are not intended for members who are on advisory bodies as representatives of organizations where they are employed. Now, the idea was, primarily to recognize as I said, the support and the contributions of community members who are sharing their lived experience and taking part in a committee meeting might be taking time away from their job or caring for their family or doing other community work. But also the city recognizes that even if you are here as a representative of an organization, you can still, of course, request those payments. We know that individual circumstances can be different, and that, frankly, a lot of the nonprofits and community organizations that contribute to our council advisory bodies themselves have limited budgets, and Toronto is also a very expensive city to live in, quite frankly. So we leave that entirely up to you as members. So you may have already heard, for the new members, you may have already heard from staff in the Indigenous Affairs Office. There's some basic paperwork to fill out at the beginning just to get you set up in the city's payment system, but it's relatively painless, and we can guide you through that if you have any hiccups along the way. So the Indigenous Affairs Office staff can help answer any questions about, and so can I as well, about setting that up. But it is there, and if anyone, any new members or current members who are not currently receiving honorary would like to do that, you can follow up with us afterwards. We're happy to get that set up for you. Again, as a way to help, just help recognize the important time and energy that people are contributing. Now, sometimes it may happen. I talked earlier about there may be circumstances where you have to miss a meeting now and then. That's perfectly normal. If you need to be away from the committee for an extended period of time, maybe you are going to be out of the city for a while, or you have something else going on in your life, committee members are able to take a leave of absence for any period of time. Now, I know there's not a lot of time left in this year, in this term, but I want to mention it anyway because it's important information to know. So you are able to take a leave of absence from the committee. And also, if you are to run for office, for example, if one of you was going to run for office in the, say, provincial election, just as an example, in June, in that case, the city's policy says that you need to step away from the committee if you are running for office. So you can take a leave. You still have that seat on the committee sort of waiting for you when you come back, but in the meantime, you won't be counted as an active member of the committee. If you have any questions about that, again, you can always contact our office if you're interested. If you feel like you need to take a leave of absence for any reason, we're here to help you out with that. A couple final things I just want to touch on. Just speaking at a very high level, you know, the committee's mandate and the composition and the structure of the committee are set out in this thing called the terms of reference. The terms of reference for each committee are adopted by City Council, and again, you're going to hear more about that in just a moment. But I think in a nutshell, what public appointees to these committees do, you are really, you know, you're supporting council decision making, you're giving very important advice, you're giving amazing wisdom and perspective. And the voices that you bring to the table are influencing city programs and services that impact people across the city, that impact Indigenous communities across Toronto and broader, I think, as well. So, but also, you know, that can feel like a great responsibility that's on your shoulders. But as public appointees, you're also not doing that work on your own. You have support, of course, from staff like Jonathan and Sylvia from the clerk's office who help with the sort of the meeting management piece. You have members who have been on the committee for a long time, for example, like Francis and Larry, who can, you know, sort of play a mentor role, I think, to new members, if you don't mind me suggesting that. There are, of course, people like Selena from the Indigenous Affairs Office and Jeff and others from that amazing team. There are people like myself who work in this public appointments team. You're going to hear from the city manager's office in a minute. So all this to say, your work is not done in a vacuum, and staff are here to support you along the journey. Whether you have questions about a procedural item or a question about a sort of a bigger existential question about you as a committee member or anything like that, we're here to help with that. And, you know, and as public members on a committee, I know all of you have incredible experience. Many of you are serve on other or are members of other community organizations or other committees, have been part of different roundtables and circles and all these things. And one thing I just really want to touch on is that by being part of an advisory body like this, you know, there are principles that I think the City of Toronto feels are also so important when we get together as members of the public and staff and members of council to have these important discussions. And I'll just touch on these very quickly. And I think this is stuff that would, I think, resonate with all of you in some way. But as committee members, we really hope that we as and staff supporting you as well, that we all do our best to serve the public well. So that means gaining an understanding of what the mandate of the committee is, working collaboratively towards a shared purpose, being respectful and fair and doing the committee work in a sort of open and constructive manner. We talk about fostering equity, diversity, inclusion, and reconciliation. The City of Toronto has a commitment to a discrimination-free environment, and the City of Toronto has many goals and has a strong vision towards supporting diversity, equity, reconciliation, and inclusion in our work. And this committee is a very important part of that, as are our other council advisory bodies. We ask that all members act with integrity and impartiality. So to try and you know, do your work in an objective and unfluenced manner and think about the public good when we're having our discussions. And champion the standards of public service. That's something that really resonates me with staff, but I think for members of like a committee like yourself as well, this is really about we ask people to think about being objective in their discussions, to be open and to be honest and to show leadership, because all of you as committee members are doing a really important leadership role here as well. So there's just some things, just some seeds I sort of want to plant. And I think all of this is stuff that you all have your own experiences with, but I want to just mention that it's important to us as staff as well. Last thing I'm going to say, if you ever need to contact us in my office, for example, in the Public Appointments Secretariat, do let us know if your contact information changes, even if you just have a new email address you want to use for these communications when you get agendas and stuff. Do let us know. If you have any eligibility issues, if you are moving out of the city, or if you have been offered a job to work for the City of Toronto or a city agency like the library or the TTC or something like that, please do let us know. If you need to take a leave of absence, let us know. And if you have to resign, which I hope none of you have to, but if you do need to step down from the committee for some reason, please just let us know and we'll work with you on that. And my contact information is here. But as I said at the outset, if you're not sure who to call and you have a question about something, you can, ask Jonathan and he can send it to me. You can ask Selena and she can send it to whoever it needs to go to. So we internally can sort of triage this stuff if you can't remember sort of who the right staff person is with the answer on whatever question you have. That's all I want to say for now. But again, thank you for sharing your time with me, and happy to clarify anything I can. Or
Thank you so much, Mr. Cowley. And I'd just like to take a moment to quickly acknowledge all the administrators and the clerks at the city. Speaking from very personal experience, they have been very detailed and supportive in guiding my chairing role and supporting all of my gaps in knowledge. And so if you do have questions, they are there and they are super helpful. So if you have any questions for the staff on this item, please raise your hand or unmute. Francis?
Yeah, Matthew, I'm just looking at the leave of absence slide that you had up, and when they're going to be away. Seeing as we have lived through this darn pandemic and we have learned to virtually meet together, if someone's going to be away, is there the opportunity for them, suppose they've been called to Ottawa or Sudbury or Hamilton, and they need to, and they want to be part of a meeting, there's something on the agenda that they must speak to, is there the possibility of them attending the meeting virtually, even after we do get back face to face?
thanks for that question, Francis. You have gone right to one of the most interesting and tricky questions that someone could have asked about meeting participation during a pandemic. So the short answer, I think, is if you can, we are all participating remotely. So the public appointments policy does say that you need to be a resident, you need to be living in the city to be appointed. We also do recognize that people do sometimes, even in a pandemic, sometimes travel out of town to visit someone, to take care of someone for a business reason, for something like that. So I think, if there's an individual circumstance, we can help you work it out. I think my short answer is, if you were going to be out of town for a bit for something and you were able to join remotely from another place, I think we could manage that. I think it's a bigger issue if someone said, I'm just going to hypothetical example. Someone says, I'm going to move to British Columbia for 2 years. Can I remain on the committee? And I think now we're all remote at this point, but crossing my fingers, I'd hope that in the not so distant future, we will all be in place together. And I think the idea is that members should be able to join a meeting in person if possible. So again, if that's a situation that arises for one of you, then we can help figure out the answer. We don't want, if someone has to be away for the next meeting, and if you were going to be out of town for the next meeting, but you could join remotely, I think we could say, sure, we can figure that out. That's not a big deal. It's more, I think when we get into, I think it would be more complicated if someone said, I'm going to move across the country for 2 years. Can I be remote for all of these meetings? if everyone else was back in person. I think we'd have to figure out what made the most sense in that case. I hope that clarifies. I know that's not a rock solid answer, but I hope that clarifies for you.
No, that's fine, Matthew. I was just thinking of just, I'm not thinking Vancouver, I'm thinking Hamilton, I'm thinking Sudbury. You know, and if they have to miss a meeting, can they join virtually? And the answer to that is yes. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it is. Thank you.
Suzanne?
Yeah, one quick question. Now that we're 25 members, I'm going to assume that quorum is 13. And again, with the leave of absence, I imagine that if somebody, like, let's say if I'm asking for a leave of absence for 6 months, during any meetings being held during those 6 months, I'm not included. Like the membership will have dropped to 24, right?
Yeah, I might ask Jonathan or Sylvia to clarify, because this is another great clerk question. I love this question. Maybe you can clarify. I think the answer is that quorum is not impacted by absences or vacancies. So if the committee is 25, the quorum, I believe, remains 13 regardless, but I might be wrong. Jonathan, can you correct me, because I know you'll know the answer.
Yes, thank you, Matt, and thank you for that question, Suzanne. Actually, the quorum for this committee back in 2019, City Council approved the recommendation of the committee to lower down the quorum. Instead of 50%, it's now 30%. So 30% is based on 25 membership. So the quorum is only 8 members at 30%. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'd forgotten about that special amendment for this committee, so that's great to know.
Are there any other questions from members?
This is Andrea. Pamela, I think that sets a danger. Obviously, we've got new members in place. I think there needs to be some discussions having 50% plus one still maintained within a 25, because 8 members is really it doesn't. I don't feel that 8 members should be representing our community at all. I think that we need to revisit this. That's my comment. And the question is not to this young man. The question is back to the committee itself, in terms. I think if you're meeting on a community level, sure to want to have X number of people making a decision on our parts. So I think the committee needs to revisit this and advance some recommendations. Yonko.
Thank you, Andrea. I think that there is a running list of items that want to be explored and revisited when the term ends, when we reevaluate the terms of reference. And so we can make a note of that. And perhaps Selena and clerks could also make a note so that we don't forget that when we have an opportunity to reevaluate some of the processes. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I will ask if there are any speakers to the item. Seeing none. Oh, sorry, someone unmuted. Andrea?
It's Andrea. So before we go forward, so how long is the process? You're going to reevaluate, or Selena, who's not on the committee, is going to reevaluate. So how long is it? What is the term? So when are we planning to revisit?
The term ends November 14th of this year.
Okay, thank you.
Any further speakers? Okay. Mr. Layton?
Yes, I would just quickly, to Andrea's point, I think when we did, if I'm not mistaken, when we did make that change to 8 members, it's because we were struggling with maintaining quorum with the list that was prescribed to us. And since we've made the change to community members rather than simply EDs of organizations, I think we have to trust that that was the right decision, and that we'll be able to have more people join. So I think from an accountability perspective, I think Andrea's right. There are 3 meetings left. So I think the decision would be, do we trust that within those 3 meetings we'll be able to achieve quorum, and as well as ensure that there are over 50% plus 1 members. I'd like to think that we can, but if there is a worry of that, I'm sure by the next meeting we could come up with some language to try to address that for the 2 final meetings. But I think like we went through, at least my first term, months, if not 2 or 3 years, when we didn't have members, we didn't have enough members for quorum. In that case, we ran very unofficial meetings that were very much against this, that they weren't in keeping with the city rules, but we didn't make any decisions as a result. We just had a friendly exchange and discussion of ideas and put off the decisions until we had quorum. But that I think that's what we were trying to address, because we're a far more structured and clerked committee now. So maybe it would be wise just to give a strong recommendation to staff that we reestablish the 50% plus 1 either in the new term, or if we see there being a problem in the next couple of months, that we try to address it immediately.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers?
I have one last question. Sorry about that, Pamela, and thank you, Michael, because so I know that this is ultimately going to go back for approval by the city. So what's the standard of the city? So you now have a number of your committee members or your council. So are they of the same mind that, I think that the numbers are the same, that you can make decisions based on 8? So I mean, because you are going to be making it the approval for for the recommendations going forward. So I just want to keep that in mind too as well. Thank you.
Would you like to respond?
Sure. No, we don't have any quorum. Matthew may know differently, but the quorum, I think, is always 50% plus 1. But we also work on a system where if there is quorum, you can't have quorum in the same room meeting about an issue unrelated to the committee, which sometimes makes life a little bit difficult, because I can't hang out with on our community council. There's 8 of us. We're all close friends. And so it's tricky to meet about other issues because it constitutes quorum, which I don't think we've ever applied that to advisory bodies, nor should we. But I can't think of any committees that where quorums under 50% plus 1. I would say though that we may want to give at least a round of meetings with our existing quorum and our new number to see how we do. Just so we don't end up in a situation where one of the last 3 meetings doesn't achieve quorum and we aren't able to conduct business, because I think we're going to have a busy, hopefully we'll have a very busy year.
Other comments or questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion to receive this item? Angus? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Any opposed, please raise your hand. The motion carries. Thank you very much. And the next item, Brian is going to lead.
Sure, yeah, thank you, Pam. The next item is item AA 15.3, City Governance Overview and the Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee. Sonali Chakraborty, Project Director, Corporate Initiatives, City Manager's Office, will give a presentation to the committee. I apologize for mangling your name just now. I will have it right by the time I come back to you. When you're ready, Sonali.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. So I'm Sonali Chakraborty, as introduced from the City Manager's Office. I have a presentation to go over, so I'm going to bring it up on the screen. So I'll be going over some information about how the city's government is organized, so that you can get an understanding of where the role of council advisory bodies such as this one fits. I have a number of slides that I will go through, and then some additional ones that I may leave with you. You'll see the deck on the agenda and with some more detailed information, but I'm happy to answer questions and welcome your engagement following this meeting if you like, but I'm mindful that you have a full agenda. So here's a bit of a picture of our government, and I think it's good to kind of anchor your sense of how the government is organized in this. So the decision making that takes place in our governance structure is by City Council. And then there are a number of places that City Council has chosen to delegate some decision making to other entities. So much of the city's work is advanced through the direction from City Council and through the delegation of certain authorities to the public service. So that includes the City Manager's Office, the Indigenous Affairs Office, and a number of city divisions that you are familiar with or will become more familiar with as you undertake your work on this committee. And the city clerk's office is part of the public service, but is a bit independent of the city manager's office, and it provides support to council and its committees. Council's also has created a number of agencies and corporations through the legislative power that it has. So the city's powers come from the City of Toronto Act. We have our own enabling legislation, and there's a similar act for other municipalities. So through that, there are agencies and corporations that you would be familiar with even outside of your work on this committee. So for example, the Toronto Transit Commission, the TTC is a city agency, the library, the police, governed by the Police Services Board, and then corporations are such things as Toronto Hydro, Toronto Community Housing Corporation. Those are just to name a few. Those are separate, somewhat separate entities. So the council has created boards that are appointed by council. It includes some public members as well as members of council. And those are the examples of other appointments that Matthew was talking about just a little while ago. That there are various opportunities for appointment, and some of those are to the boards that govern these entities. And there's probably about 50% of the city's budget in terms of services are delivered through the public service, and then the other half is through these agencies and corporations. And then we have accountability officers that provide oversight to our government, and that includes, for example, an auditor general that looks at value for money, an ombudsman to look at whether public services are being delivered fairly, an integrity commissioner, a lobbyist registrar. So we'll just look at council to start in terms of the governing body. So council has a number of committees, and members of council sit on these committees. Some final decision making is authorized by council to some of these committees. So for example, on local matters, community councils do make decisions. Otherwise, policy matters generally come through standing committees, and final decisions are made. They contemplate issues and they make recommendations, and final decisions are made by City Council. Council advisory bodies, such as the Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee, provide advice through standing committee. So it provides advice through the executive committee, which is chaired by the mayor, and has the chairs of the standing committees who also sit on the executive committee along with some others. So the role of this committee is to contemplate the issues of interest and provide advice through that committee to City Council to make final decisions. And in that, there's a lot of interaction with members of the public service, including providing advice back as they also recommend reports and things through the standing committee. Right now, the budget committee is very active. The early part of a calendar year is when the city approves its budget. So you'll see a lot in the media, and you'll see a lot on the council agendas around budget committee meetings and materials that will eventually go to executive committee and council for final decision making in February. This is just a map of those community councils where particular kinds of issues are considered by those councils that are local in nature, and some planning matters, transportation, etc. This is a quite, I think, an important slide for you to come back to in the course of your work on this committee. So the process for decision making. So items come through the legislative process in a number of ways. So there can be new, like, items that are generated by members of council. There are reports from city staff. Some of those are in response to direction council has already made, but some of those are also initiated by staff because there's important information that they need to put forward through the legislative process. There are reports from agencies and corporations at times, although they have their own governance through their boards, but there are matters that will come forward to council as well. And then there are reports from council advisory bodies, such as this committee, that, as mentioned, come through executive committee. All reports have to go through a standing committee or a community council before they come to city council, outside of some very few exceptional situations where something might go directly. At the standing committee and community councils, there's an opportunity for members of the public to provide input, and those are called deputations. So there is engagement that happens at the report generation level of the community engagement and input that's conducted by staff, public engagement. And then there's also those deputations that happen at committee where they can speak directly to the members contemplating the reports. And then there's recommendations from those committees that go to city council, and then you see those large agendas that happen roughly every 5 to 6 weeks, and when final decisions are made. There is opportunity for further iterative work through this process. Sometimes the standing committee might send something back and ask for additional work. Council may also do that, or council may make that decision, and then those decisions are implemented, often again by members of the public. So now, kind of specifically about the Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee, along with council advisory bodies in general. So council advises these bodies to provide advice and assist with the decision making. And they're not bodies that, for example, deliver services or direct the public service or make binding decisions. In general, the composition includes members of council and at least 50% public members appointed by city council, but often you'll see that there's one member of council and largely public members. Although there are these bodies that directly advise council through the committee structure that I mentioned, there are a much greater number of program advisory bodies that you may also be engaged with or have in the past been engaged with. And those are the kinds of, whether they're called committees or tables, or there's a number of different names where program areas and divisions are looking for engagement from the expertise of the community. So for example, the Indigenous Affairs Office may have a number of these that they're engaging with currently, and it informs the work that they're bringing forward to council. So these are all of the council advisory bodies that we have at present that were instituted either at the start of this council term or at some other point later on in this. So the Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee has existed for multiple council terms, as Councillor Layton was referring to. Within this council term, the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Advisory Committee was established, as well as the Two-Spirit, Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, and Queer Advisory Committee. And then there, you'll notice a few that are more sectoral in nature in terms of economic development. So there's a much smaller number. We could have up to 100 program advisory bodies across the city advising staff, but we only have this many that are directly within the council committee. So the mandate of the Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee, as stated in the terms of reference, which you also have in your agenda as a link, is to provide advice to City Council on the elimination of barriers faced by Aboriginal peoples, including barriers related to city bylaws, policies, programs, and service delivery, to act as a liaison with external bodies on barriers to participation of Aboriginal peoples in public life, and on advancing the achievement of social, cultural, economic, and spiritual well-being of Aboriginal peoples. The governance is largely similar to all other council advisory bodies, so not significantly unique. However, the kinds of things that are unique might be the total composition of the committee. So in this case, it's 25, and that might differ for some of the other committees. In this case, the membership is both representatives of organizations as well as the community at large, and that's a recent change. But for other committees, there could be other permutations and combinations of membership. You'll be hearing more about the simplified procedures for advisory bodies, so I won't get into that. All meetings are open to the public, and this kind of connects to the discussion on quorum. So if we have another committee of council and there's only 6 members and quorum is 3, then if those 3 councillors happen to be having a separate meeting, technically quorum has been met. And that meeting of those 3 councillors, the unscheduled one, actually should be open to the public, which is why it's really important for them to be mindful of having their opportunities to gather, because these rules are enshrined in law that they must be open in case business is being advanced. You've already heard that there are 6 meetings per year for this committee, and that policy support is provided by Indigenous affairs staff, and they'll be speaking more at this meeting, and as well as you've already heard from the City Clerk's Office of their supports. So just one more slide on the terms of reference, because there have been some updates to it within this council term, which may not often occur with many other advisory bodies within the council term. So the committee was established at the beginning of term. The terms of reference are adopted by council, which you've heard. One of those amendments was done in October 2021, where in terms of the membership being both representatives of organizations and the community at large. And there has been discussions about the process for public appointments to the committee. So there is a scheduled report to come forward to this committee at its next meeting on some options. Just some context of those you'll be in who are the best people to reach out to for questions on meeting management and strategic advice. I'm going to leave, my contact is on here if you have questions about city governance, but there are a number of slides that I won't go through now with additional information. So you're welcome to reach out to me if you're navigating those, and there are a number of links to city web pages as well to supplement that information.
Thank you, Ms. Chakraborty. Members, do you have any questions of staff on this item? Seeing none. Are there any speakers to this item? If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and make sure that your camera's on and you're unmuted. Seeing none. Hearing no further speakers, do I have a motion to receive the item? I see Ruth Green. All of those in favor? And any opposed? Seeing none. The motion carries. Go ahead, Pam.
Thank you. So our next item is meeting processes and the simplified rules of procedure. And Sylvia Pisharzetsky, Administrator, Secretariat, City Clerk's Office, will give a presentation to the committee.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to all the new members. It's nice to see so many faces, and like some of the others, I was very inspired by the introductions. My name is Sylvia Pisharzetsky. I am an administrator in the City Clerk's Office. I work with Jonathan Cancella, who's the secretary to the Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee, in supporting the meeting management. And so I'm going to share my screen, and I hope I do this right. Okay, so I'm going to talk about what might sound like a little bit of a dry subject, but the rules of procedure. And so like any other committees you might sit on, any other boards you might sit on or have had experience with. The meetings of the Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee are structured according to a set of rules. And in our case, these rules are the simplified rules of procedure. And simplified simply means that they are a simplified or pared down version of City Council's rules, which are in Chapter 27 of the Municipal Code. So they're based on the same principles, but they're tailored to the needs of an advisory committee. So they simply omit procedures or circumstances that might apply only to council or that apply to a circumstance that your committee would be unlikely to meet. So the principles that form the basis of the simplified rules are on the slide. These are the same principles that form the basis of City Council's rules of procedures as well. And these are the rights of members. These principles safeguard the rights of all members to participate equally in the meeting. So I'll just let everyone have a look, but effectively the majority of members have the right to decide, the minority of members have the right to be heard, all members have the right to the same information, members have the right to an efficient meeting, members have the right to be treated with respect and courtesy, and all members have equal rights, privileges, and obligations. So another principle, and this is one that's enshrined in law, is that all decision-making takes place in public, and Shonali just spoke to this. So the public may attend any meeting in person or virtually, and may submit written comments or present to the committee on any item on its agenda. The agenda that you received for this meeting serves as notice of the meeting. So only the items included on the agenda may be discussed, as those are the items of which the public has received notice. Members may not conduct business, that is, may not materially advance the progress on any agenda item outside of the meeting itself. And all meetings must begin and end in public. That's a rule, but that does not mean they must be public from beginning to end. There are about a dozen circumstances set out in the City of Toronto Act that would make it appropriate for a committee to close its meeting, and a couple are listed here. So if the committee were to discuss any personal matters about identifiable individuals, or for instance receive advice that might be subject to solicitor-client privilege, those would be circumstances under which a meeting could be closed. The simplified rules set out the role of the co-chairs, the chair or co-chairs. Essentially, the chair assures the progression of business by ensuring that agenda items are fully considered and decided upon, and that order and decorum is maintained. So the committee's terms of reference provide for the election of 2 co-chairs from among the committee membership, and our 2 co-chairs were so elected. Your committee is actually the only council advisory body with a true co-chairship. The other advisory committees have a chair appointed by City Council, and then a co-chair is then elected alongside. So this slide sets out the responsibilities of members. So if you recall, one of the foundational principles that underpin the rules is that all members have equal rights, privileges, and obligations. So this really sets out the obligations. Now, there is an order of business that you will see on every agenda, including the one before you today. And in very simple terms, the presiding co-chair will call the meeting to order, will ask for declarations of interest. And I should say the meeting will be called to order at the scheduled start time once quorum is present. And the committee has 30 minutes to achieve quorum. At every meeting, one of the co-chairs will call for the declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. So if a matter comes up before the committee for which you or a close family member have a pecuniary interest, you would be required to disclose the interest. And this must be done verbally and in writing. If you have questions about this, City Clerk's office staff can provide some guidance, And then for advice on particular circumstances, you may reach out to the city's Integrity Commissioner for advice. The chair will call for the confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting. And then you will have had an opportunity to review the minutes online. So we do our best. Our service standard is 2 business days. So within 2 business days of having participated in a meeting, you should find the minutes posted on the city's website. Then the committee considers the agenda items one at a time, and then once the meeting has been concluded, the chair concludes the meeting, adjourns the meeting, and there's no motion required for adjournment. So again, you will have received an agenda for this meeting. The agenda lists the items of business in the order in which they'll be considered and also serves as public notice of the committee's business. The committee secretary, so Jonathan and I, we prepare and publish and distribute the agenda for each meeting. But there is electronic distribution only. So agendas are published to the TMMIS website. And you also will receive an email from one of us advising you that the agenda is there and ready to be reviewed. You're also encouraged to sign up for automatic e-alerts. This can be done through our website, and that will send you automatic notification whenever an agenda is published, any supplementary materials are published, if a notice of meeting of rescheduling has been published or minutes. So any changes to the status of committee business are indicated by automatic email if you sign up. And city agendas do take a little bit of getting used to. They may look a little different from agendas that you've seen in the past, but they do contain a lot of useful information. So the simplified rules establish how items can be added to the agenda. You as committee members may add items to the agenda. So if you do have an idea for an item, reach out to, you can reach out to program staff. You can reach out, for instance, to Selena or to the city clerk's office, and we can help you finalize your item, both in terms of its germaneness to the terms of reference of the committee and also in terms of form. And we can make sure that it fits within the scope of the mandate. Agenda items may also be placed on the agenda by City Council. City Council may refer items, a council committee, a local board of the city, or a city official. And most of the items on today's agenda have been placed there by city officials. If you're looking for particular items, each agenda item has a particular identifier, and that's just a combination of the committee code. So the Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee has the code of AA. Next is the meeting number and then the item number. So what you're looking at in this example is the 5th item from the 7th meeting of the Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee. And this is just useful to know because the TMMIS website where the agendas are posted does have a search feature. So if you're looking for a particular item, if you know the code, you can simply enter it and it will pull up all the decisions relevant to that item. Many of the agenda items are relevant to the city as a whole. So there's a little place where it'll indicate the ward. Some are ward specific and might relate to a particular address. We have one item on today's agenda that's like that. And that also helps the councillors on the committee and on city council to know when things are happening in their communities. The origin field, you won't always see this, but some items do originate with a letter or a report. So for instance, if you as members wish to put something onto the agenda, one way of doing that would be to write a letter to the committee, and then the origin would be a letter from the committee member, and that letter might contain recommendations that you would like the committee to adopt. Also, there's a below the fold here, which didn't quite get captured on the slide, there's also a summary for each item, and the summary provides a bit of history or context for the item. And under background information, you will see all of the documents that have been submitted on the item listed, and all the public documents will have hyperlinks. So you can access all the documents through the agenda. Okay, on each agenda item, the chair introduces the item. There may be a staff presentation offered by a city official, such as the ones that you're hearing today, Or occasionally there might be a presentation by an outside organization that was invited to speak to the committee either at the request of the committee itself or at the request of staff. There may be public speakers who have registered to speak to address the committee, and if there are public speakers, you as committee members have the opportunity to ask questions of the public speakers. Then members have the opportunity to ask questions of staff, following which members may speak and move motions. And once that's all done, members vote on motions. So that's the general flow for each item. Sometimes agenda items are quite quick, such as your first one today, where really only the first and the last bullet have to take place. So the chair does have to bring an agenda forward for the committee's consideration, and the committee has to make a decision on it. So the committee must vote. And this ties into how council advisory bodies give advice. So the committee must vote because there must be a decision on each item, and it's through its decisions that the advisory body fulfills its role and gives advice, either by making recommendations to city officials on matters within their jurisdiction, by making recommendations to council committees, or directly to city council if there's a matter on the upcoming council agenda that, that is relevant. And just an important point is that any recommendation that requires action by city officials or by city council must first be considered by the appropriate council committee. So your recommendation will flow up to one of the standing committees, and that's where it will be, that's where it will meet with final approval by the councillors who sit on that committee. Every item must be dealt with by motion in one of the following ways. And so in most circumstances, 99.9% of the items that come before you, you will either be voting to receive the item, which simply means to acknowledge the matter and take no further action. You may be voting to defer the item to a future meeting, that is to postpone consideration until a specific time or until a specific condition has been met. You may simply adopt the recommendations before you, or you may amend the recommendations by proposing amendments or new recommendations. Motions to amend are substantive, and so we would love to see these in advance wherever possible, because City Clerk's office staff will help you with the drafting and the format of the motions, and with your permission, we might seek input from any relevant city staff to help supplement the motion. And the motions, we do need them prepared in advance because they are displayed and read aloud before being voted on. And this is just to make sure that everybody in the room knows very clearly what the proposition is and what it is that you are voting on. Okay, as part of the process, you do not need to second motions, and of course, motions do have to be within the committee's mandate, otherwise they may be ruled out of order by the co-chairs. Okay, all members must vote. A majority vote is required to pass a motion. A tie vote is a lost motion. And members may vote by a show of hands or may ask to have the vote recorded in the minutes. This is true in the virtual space as well. So you may vote by a show of hands. And if anybody would like to have a motion or a vote recorded, the way that it happens over WebEx is you will be asked to state into your mic if you are in favor or opposed. And then we will tally the results. Okay, a few other meeting matters. Quorum we've already talked about. This is the minimum number of members required to be present to conduct business at the meeting. The simplified rules set quorum to be the majority of members, but as you heard, the terms of reference for your particular committee were amended to lower that quorum. The terms of reference and the simplified rules are the two governing documents of your committee, and when there's a conflict between the two, it's the terms of reference that take precedence, because these simplified rules are the same for all council advisory bodies, but the terms of reference are specific to your committee. Quorum must be present within 30 minutes of the scheduled start time, and if no quorum is achieved, the meeting cannot take place. And my colleague, Matthew from Public Appointments already spoke to absences, but this is a very important point, so it bears repeating. If you know you're going to be away for a meeting, and of course this happens, you're busy people, you're here because we want you for your expertise, but that means you're in demand other places as well. Things come up, but please let us know, because if we receive regrets from you, the chair will move, or a motion will be moved to excuse the members who are absent at the end of the meeting. So if you send your regrets, a motion can be prepared to excuse you, because if you are absent from 3 meetings in a row without being excused by motion, then your seat will become vacant and you would no longer be a member. So just let us know if you know that you're going to be away. And you can send a note to Jonathan or to me at aaac@toronto.ca. You can let the co-chairs know as well. We're in communication before a meeting, but if you let us know, that will be very, very helpful. And minutes and how to follow decisions. So the city uses, I mean, you're probably a little bit by now familiar with the city's website. We have the TMMIS system, which is a Toronto Meeting Management Information System that is a depository for all meeting minutes, materials, decisions, and so on. There's a lot of information there. Usually as part of this presentation, I might click through and sort of give a little tips on navigating the system, but I do appreciate that we are early into a very packed agenda. So perhaps I'll leave the links up here if anyone has any questions on how to navigate the site most effectively, or if you're just looking for information, you can let us know. You can let any of my colleagues know. As Matt said, we all talk together, and we can get you the information that you need. So I will stop here, and there's Jonathan's contact information, and I will take down my screen, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. Otherwise, please feel free to reach out anytime.
Thank you so much for that detailed presentation. So are there questions from members? Angus, I think your hand was up.
Not so much a comment or question, but a comment for the new members of the committee. It's really useful to sign up for automatic notifications that stuff has been posted. It's often the case because people are busy that material gets updated and posted. I mean, yesterday it was being posted up until 10 to 5. So if you want to have a chance to review material, it's useful to sign up to get those automatic reminders.
Thanks, Angus. Anyone else? Francis?
Yeah, I just on what Angus has said, we know right up until last evening, information was flying out of City Hall on what we're going to be talking about today. Even though this agenda has been out for a long time, is there any rule or process that says people have to have their information in so that we have an opportunity to read it, understand it, make a decision on it with more than 24 hours notice about it? Like Angus said, many of us are running businesses, organizations, and we do have a life sometimes. So is there a possibility to make it final that even a week before, this is on the agenda, this well ahead of time, if it's going to be on the agenda, give us the information ahead of time, because that's a lot of paperwork to sit and read, digest, and come up with some kind of a thought on it, an intelligent thought on it, and not just pass it because we have to pass it or fail it because we haven't had an opportunity.
And thank you for that, Francis. Perhaps I neglected to note they're on the slide. I'm not sure if I spoke directly to the deadlines. So the agenda closing, so the date by which clerks need to receive items for placing on an agenda, are 10 business days before the meeting at noon. And the agenda publication is 5 business days. So you can expect to have an agenda 5 business days before the meeting. That said, occasionally we receive supplementary information. There's a new document that comes up, or a presentation has been updated, or something new has been added by city staff. So once the item has been published with the agenda, we do accept supplementary information to be submitted right up until the meeting time. So on the process side, so the items themselves are set 5 days before, but if there are additional pieces that staff wish to add, that is something that happens right up until the meeting.
Thanks, Sylvia. That doesn't help because, like I said, we got a ton of paper the day before, and so to digest it properly is not a help. And I don't want to do a disservice to the work that people have done, but also everybody functions under a deadline. And, if you can't get your act together ahead of time, then, move it to the next meeting. So I'm just, in fairness and consideration of everyone's time and the meeting and trying to make things move forward, sliding something under the line at the last minute makes me be a little suspect, that's all.
Councillor Layton.
I would just add to Francis's comment that this is where, like, we as a committee have an option to defer the item and bring it back to our next meeting, which is typically if it's an issue that isn't urgent, then that is pretty typical of other city committees to just say, oh, we haven't had the time. This can wait. However, if it's something that's urgent, it was probably a last minute report already, and the reason for its lateness is that it somehow ended up on someone's plate at the 11th hour of the day. So we tend to have a bit more tolerance at committees when the matter is urgent, or if it's something that we requested very late and didn't give staff a whole lot of time. For the most part, though, the information comes in much faster than it has typically, it did for this past meeting. Well, I think by reserving the right to defer it, that may help put your mind at ease. But yes, of course, clerks will always try to get it to us within the 5 days or the 7 days.
Let me just straighten that. I always have I have great respect for the clerks, not their fault. It's people submitting those reports who I want to smack with a stick.
I'm Stephen, then Angus.
Okay. I have a question. So when our committee is going to pass items that are deemed policy, we have one today. All I see is a PowerPoint overview. I don't actually see the policy document. Is it reasonable for committee members to see the actual document that they're being asked to pass so that they can make an informed decision on what they're going to pass? Because we have one later today. All I see is a PowerPoint with general strokes. And I know some of us have made commentary on this draft policy document. And I don't see the actual document with some of the input that a few of us have shared. So is it reasonable to expect a committee such as ours to pass a policy document based off of a PowerPoint?
So if you're talking about an upcoming agenda item, perhaps the question about the materials that were provided would appropriately be placed there, because there are a number of presentations before you. So there are no policy documents before you with recommendations, right? If the actual report or policy comes with recommendations, those recommendations are right up front and center on the agenda. Looking at today's agenda, it looks like there are a number of presentations. which are, which can generate feedback and can certainly generate amendments. But in terms of the recommendations being put before you, there aren't any specific policies to adopt. But when you get to the specific item that you're referring to, perhaps that's a conversation for staff who are presenting on that item, and to raise with them at that time.
I guess.
I just want to say, like, with regard to Steve's point, that I agree completely. So we're going to be dealing today with or receiving a PowerPoint presentation on the reconciliation action plan, but I don't think the reconciliation action plan was there. So when we get to that, I imagine what we'll be doing is passing a motion to receive the presentation, and nobody should interpret that as being anything more than, yes, we saw the presentation, thank you very much, because we haven't been able to see anything else. And getting back to Francis's point and the point I made earlier, yeah, it's definitely not a reflection on the city clerk staff, who are awesome. For the new members, the city clerk staff they're terrific to work with. It's a reflection on the people who are preparing the PowerPoint presentations and the presentations that they don't quite get it right. They put it in, and then at 10 to 5, the day before the meeting, they're updating the PowerPoint presentation, and lucky you get to figure out where it is in the website and print it out and review it and try to figure out what the changes are. It's not a very functional process. Anyway, that's all I got to say.
Are there other questions or comments, Cynthia?
I'm just wondering about, or did I miss it, of abstentions? Is that a part of when motions are being discussed, and if we feel strongly from abstaining from a particular motion, can we call it out and be recorded within the minutes?
So no, we don't record abstentions. Our voting procedure is, so the simplified rules take the voting procedures from Chapter 27, which is structured around the City of Toronto Act, and every member, as noted on that slide, every member who is present to vote must vote either in the positive or the affirmative. So when we get to a recorded vote, if a member who is present and not voting, that vote is recorded as a negative vote. We do not record abstentions, and that comes from the City of Toronto Act.
If I could add, there is one small way around this, and it is if you just shut off your camera or disconnect briefly while the vote is happening. And Sylvia, you can confirm that that doesn't count in the negative if you walk away from your screen briefly. If we were in person, you could do the same. Stretch your legs, maybe visit the restroom while that item was being dealt with. It's not uncommon that councillors would just take a walk on a vote that perhaps they would prefer not to be recorded in either way on.
So to Councillor, in our minutes when we record the recorded votes, there's no abstentions, but it does indicate who is absent for a vote. So in that case, if you were not available on the screen or in the room, we would mark you as absent.
May I ask a question? Okay, this is my first meeting. My name is Nora, and I'm here participating and listening, but I have to go away to take my mother to dialysis. I have to drive her at 12 o'clock. That's every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So if I'm away when they do a vote, what happens with that? Like, I'll be back as soon as I drive her, but how does that work? Do I let them know in the morning? Like, what do I do in those cases?
Thank you for the question. If you're absent for a number of votes take place which are simply hand votes, so they're recorded as carried or lost. If you are absent for a recorded vote, then you would simply marked as absent during the recorded vote, because the vote is taken and recorded in the moment. So if and this happens, if you look at minutes from previous meetings, but you would be marked absent.
Francis?
Thank you. Cynthia raises an excellent point. I am so thrilled to see new faces. You have no idea. New energy, new legs, new ideas. But they are all new. We're entrusting them to make an informed decision on issues that we've been working on for quite a long time, and they have no history, they have no background, they have no backstory on how we got to this place. And now we're asking all these new people to come together and make a decision on something that we've been working on. I don't think it's fair to them to ask them to make a decision on things that they're jumping in the, they're changing horses in the middle of the street. It's an old saying that you don't do that kind of thing. So these new horses that we've got in our circle, it's not fair to them to ask them to make a decision like that. So I agree with Cynthia that, how does she make a decision on this? How does she know to vote yes, to vote no, to just receive it? These are all new processes that are new to them. So I just want to thank Cynthia for raising that issue.
I would add to that comment as a reminder to all the incoming members that the clerks and the city staff are there to support. You understand the process as much as possible, and Councillor Layton did make a suggestion on if there is something that you're uncomfortable or you don't feel you have enough information. There is a roundabout way to address that, to adjust your comfort levels. But you were all selected with confidence, and we all believe in the ability to receive information, understand it, take it in, and make informed decisions. And so we're all here to support you, as are the city staff. And Brian and I are available via email if you guys have further questions or there's anything you would like to discuss with us, if we can be of any help. However, in all honesty, the city clerks are probably the best ones to go to. So are there any other comments, Brian?
Yeah, I just wanted some clarification between Sylvia and Councillor Layton's points, because it's my understanding that if we were to go to a recorded vote, even if your camera is off, Sylvia, you were saying any vote that isn't cast is a vote in the negative. Is that correct? So you would actually have to leave WebEx. You would have to leave the meeting in order to fully abstain if we do go to a recorded vote. Is that accurate?
I believe the process that's been followed as we've moved to WebEx is if a member is not in their tile, is really the only way we can judge if someone is present is if we see them on the screen. So if someone is not in their tile and we call their name, once, twice, 3 times, and they're not there, then we would mark them as absent.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments or questions? Andrea?
Hi, Yonko. And I'm in agreement with Cynthia as well as Francis. It feels really uncomfortable, right? And with Mike, I feel really bad for you exposing some of the habits that the counselor may take, that if you don't want to say yay or nay, that you stretch or you walk away. That's not something that I think we're going to encourage any of our representatives for. But again, we're members of the Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee, and I think it's really important for us to look at laying some groundwork if we're here for the community and what our expectations are. If you don't understand or don't agree with an issue because you're really not comfortable with it, I think there's room for us to make some decision to that point. And if we're saying we want to do things in a traditional context, well, then you don't try to force people to make a decision or turn their cameras off. I think we should have some ability to offer them that choice to say, we don't feel comfortable, we'll just receive it. We'll receive it, but we do want to address it again. So I think I shouldn't say, I think I know as a member within this community that I I wouldn't expect anybody to make a decision unless they were fully informed and felt comfortable, because they're here for the community, not for the City of Toronto. They're here for the community and to offer and advance any items for the consideration of City Council. Yeah.
Sylvia, you'd like to respond?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And what I'm hearing is if the committee finds itself in a situation, a number of members, where they feel they don't have enough information, or they need to take the time, or they need to take something back to their community to consult, there is always that option to defer. And that defer can have a condition, you know, that the committee defer the item until such and such committee has been consulted, or until, you know, we hear back, or until the next meeting, until we've all had a chance to, you know, look at the various circumstances. So that is always an option, so that when members do vote, which is the most important thing that they really do, that they have all the information that they need, and that they are comfortable in making a decision.
Ruth, I believe you had your hand up.
So I'm also doing math homework at both the grade 3 and the grade 6 level at the same time. So I totally agree with what Andrea was saying. This is a community space, and I don't think that it's, as I understand, we've actually tried to articulate Indigenous governance as something that's important to us. And as, you know, my Haudenosaunee auntie has, you know, mentioned there, as I understand it, consensus is very important, but with consensus, it means that you make a decision that you can live with. And the idea of leaving the circle so that you do not have to participate just is unsettling for me. And I just wanted to raise up my Onga auntie's words there and acknowledge that, you know, it didn't feel right to hear that.
If I could just add really quickly, it's unsettling when it happens at council, and typically it's because someone doesn't want to be recorded how they would like to vote. And just to tell, it's like, I don't think I've ever done it before, but I can point to votes where members have got up to leave because they don't want to be recorded in a certain position.
Nora?
Yeah, I agree with the two ladies who spoke before myself. I feel the same way. We're on this committee to unify. I know there's historical information we still have to get access to, and we will learn as we go along from the mentors. But at the same time, I do feel like if there is a decision, yay or nay, and we have to vote, if I were uncomfortable and there was, say, our new committee members who didn't have the substantive information, and we defer, because it would give us the time to get the information from our mentors and to find the committee meeting minutes and stuff like that, so that we could make, you know, a foundational base decision. Because I feel like if you're asking us to sit with you, it's to sit with you, you know, and unify. We might not agree with everything, but we need information, and I don't feel like turning off a camera is going to be effective. Like, maybe if I have to go dialysis, you know, I'm gone just for a moment. But if I'm at this table, I don't feel comfortable with that either. I feel like we just defer and we get the information, and then when we're comfortable, we vote. That's just my takeaway.
It's Patty here. I don't know how to put up my hand.
Go ahead, Patty.
Yeah, okay. So as I'm sitting listening to this, and it's about the whole process, it just drives home once again how as Indigenous people, the expectation is that we fit into and adjust our ways of being into a process that has been developed, you know, by non-Indigenous people. So I hope I can articulate this well enough. And I don't understand why, as the Aboriginal advisory committee, why we have to do that. I think that, you know, maybe we need to explore how we can sit at the table together, but, you know, side by side, using our own process and one that we're comfortable with. And I don't know if I hope I'm making sense here. It just seems like I see I know you have to have these rules and these regulations and, you know, certain processes, but we all have ways of doing things that that are quite effective. And I think that out of those ways, recommendations can go to City Council, but I don't know that we have to do it by the same rules or regulations. So that's just, I'm not comfortable at all with not being given the option to abstain at least at minimum. Or, you know, I just have a broader discussion around things. I think that, you know, if I'm not on camera, so I'm deemed as absent. I'm not absent, I'm right here. And I just am choosing to abstain. I'm not voting on an issue. If I don't have enough information about it, I'm going to abstain, and I don't think it's fair to count me as absent. So I think the process, I think maybe as an advisory council, perhaps at some point we need to explore our own internal process here and recognize that it is just as effective and meaningful as City Council's process. And so how do we create a partnership? That's my hope, is that we have a partnership and not somebody telling us all the time how we have to do things. That's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, Patty. Are there other comments, questions on this?
Yes, Larry, I echo what everybody else says. Thanks to Cynthia for bringing this up. I think it's time that we, I'm not sure if we can have a motion on this, but I really believe by turning off the camera, that's kind of dishonoring our First Nations ways of governing. So I agree with everybody. Rich, thank you.
Any speakers on the item? Sorry, who unmuted?
Just one more food for thought is that abstention doesn't necessarily mean that I don't have enough information about making a decision. It just means that, you know, you got to let it settle within myself as an individual. You're on kind of the fence of yay or nay. And so I agree with what everybody else is saying also, is that we need to look at possibilities of abstentions, because that's basically what it's about too. So you get a chance to change your mind, instead of being recorded as, oh, Cynthia, you said no to this. What was wrong with you? You know, and or you were absent, you turned off your camera. So abstention also means that you're still in that neutral part of making an informed decision, or you don't even want to make a decision because it might it doesn't settle with you or resonate with you, or you haven't digested. So there's many definitions of that could be under abstaining from language. So I'm hoping that we could look at something in the future, as Patty was mentioning, and all the other speakers. Language.
Brian?
So given the host of concerns around not having the access to an abstention, and considering the clerks and the representatives of the city that we have on hand right now, I'm wondering if we can actually move forward with a motion to create abstention as an option for this committee specifically. And I'm looking to the clerks for assistance in how we would go about doing that. And I don't know if Ruth is gesturing at me or someone else. Jonathan, Sylvia, would one of you be able to clarify?
Thank you, chairs. So I trust that the committee could propose a motion or a recommendation to make its will known, which could be moved up to a higher committee, one of the standing committees. But at this point, I don't know how far that could go, because abstentions are, I mean, this question is enshrined in the City of Toronto Act, which is kind of out of our jurisdiction to make. But I don't want to speak to that. So if this committee wishes to make a proposal and make its views known to council, that is something that the committee could do. How far that could go within the framework that we are operating in today, I can't speak to that. I would have to get some advice.
Francis?
What if we don't call it an abstention? What if we call it a maybe? Just a maybe. There are obviously good merit to having whatever it is before us, but there's not enough to make it a complete proposal that we support. Or perhaps it's a little on the other side and it needs a little work to get it up to that part. So maybe if the person who is presenting can turn things around, massage it to fit what we're looking for, don't call it an abstention, call it a maybe, if given the proper information. And then you can defer it to the next meeting.
Brian, I'm gonna build on what, thank you, Francis, build on what Sylvia has offered, as well as Francis. I'm gonna move a motion to defer this. There's no maybes, ands or buts. It's a motion to defer this, which will allow us as a committee between the next meeting is to develop something that we feel is reflective of who we are as an Indigenous advisory committee. So no maybes. I think that doesn't say anything different, Francis. We can just put our camera up on. So So I'm moving the motion to defer.
Yeah.
Just a small point of sort of procedure is what's currently before the committee is the presentation from the city clerk. So the question would be, what is being deferred? Is it this conversation, or is it just the will of the committee to bring something back to the next meeting?
I'm moving the motion to defer this discussion, which would include that the item in terms of us massaging how we want to deal with for, against, or the deferral.
So, Andrea, I was just writing a motion to put forward to add abstention as an option. Does that fall in line with what you think the will of with your interest, and then if we put it up on the screen, we can have a vote on it. Unfortunately, we can't abstain.
So I think of it up to this point, because this is a brand new year, and I forgot to say Happy New Year, Hoyan, and to the best of you. So as a brand new year, then it's a brand new opportunity for us to establish something that works for us and our community. So I think if we're going to look at not abstaining, but taking a position that if things don't, we want to defer it. We want to defer it for further dialogue or amendments. I think I'd still like to maintain, I'm not into abstentions. I think it's really, unless, you have to either say yay or nay. And the only way you're saying yay or nay if you're not informed and you don't feel comfortable with making a decision. So I'm still advancing deferral.
So Andrea would like to defer item 15.4 to the next meeting, Andrea, or a further meeting?
It doesn't have to be for the next meeting, but I think we could have it deferral with our committee members to have some dialogue, to develop something that can come to the next. Thank you for offering that.
Okay, and then so we won't pass a motion to receive this item today. We will vote on deferring this item. And before we do that, Nora, I saw you raise your hand.
No, I absolutely second whatever she said.
Okay.
It makes sense to defer, and I'm just leaving it this time, so I'll just turn my screen off and I'll turn it back on soon.
Thank you so much, Nora. Angus.
I understand that Andrea's made a motion to defer it, and that we'll be voting on that motion to defer. Is that correct?
Yes. So there is a motion to defer item 15.4. So if you are in favor, please raise your hand.
So do we get a chance to speak on the motion, Pam, or?
Sure.
Okay, so just really, really briefly, I hope people vote against this motion because I can't see a reason to defer the presentation, receipt of the presentation that we just had. I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is, how do we deal with the desire of people to be able to, of some people to be able to abstain and have that recorded. And I don't think deferring receipt of this presentation is going to do that at all. I can't see the value in that at all. So I'll be voting against it.
And with all due respect there, Angus, I also appreciate your comments. And I think it's really important. You've been around 24 years, right? And that's good. But not some of the new members. I think it's really important that we're not saying yay or nay for deferral. What we're saying is to be a more informed Indigenous members within our community for our community. I think that's I'm hopeful that you would see the merits of supporting the community to ensure that they are informed on these issues, right? As opposed to you're going to vote against it. That makes me feel very sad. And I'm not trying to create a debate, but I'll be really firm on my position.
Angus for a response, then Suzanne and Christine.
So to be clear, I support 100% the idea of all the committee members, being well informed. I think my objection to this motion has got nothing to do with that. My objection to this motion is that I don't think it achieves what we're trying to achieve here. I think that, for instance, we heard that Brian was in the midst of drafting a motion to deal with it. If that's not able to be presented today, I really, really, really hope that notice of a motion is given for the next meeting that deals with this discussion around being able to abstain or reflect in decision. And I surely don't want you to feel sad, Andrea. But I just don't think that the motion to defer receipt of the presentation we've just had accomplishes the goal that you want to accomplish. So nothing more than that. Thank you.
Suzanne?
Thank you, Pam. Yeah, like before Angus spoke, actually, I was thinking the same thing. All we're doing by voting in favor is we're voting in favor of receiving Sylvia's presentation. And I think what we should be doing is moving a motion for a review of the terms of reference at a future meeting where we can have a fulsome discussion and also prepare an alternative, like present an alternative way of handling our meetings. So I wonder, like it still would support what you are proposing, Andrea, but like I'm not seeing not accepting the receipt of Sylvia's presentation as helpful. I'm having a hard time with that. Thank you.
You won't go, Suzanne, you put it very clear, and I was acknowledging and respect your comments. You're right. We will receive. I will say I will receive the motion or advance a motion with the condition, that there is a process to amend and the reason I'm saying this, and for the new members, we had a long debate in October around issues that we weren't in agreement with. Whether we had that, whether we were of a mind, it still went as an approval. And so it becomes, I'm hopeful to start the new year with an informed, in that if we're not of one mind, then at least we can come together. It doesn't have to be within this particular table, but at least we have that opportunity for a brand new start. That's all. I will receive it. And I think the last time in October, I moved a motion to receive, and there was a debate on that. You have to either do support and or reject. So I appreciate that. I will move that motion to receive on the condition that we do have that, the consideration around the terms of reference specifically to the abstention process. It doesn't have to be at the next meeting, but it could be a meeting, in between, in preparation. So I do appreciate your comments, Suzanne, as usual. Yeah.
So very quickly, we do have two comments. I saw two hands raised, so Christine and then Councillor Layton. And I'll just affirm, Andrea, that Brian and I will ensure that we work with the clerks to make sure that that's an agenda item for the next meeting. Christine, please go ahead. You're on mute.
I think in a sense it's about, in the relationship between speech, intention, and action. So like, in a way, like some people said, not having enough time to speak in a good way, or also the value of truth. Someone said like that turning off your camera, it's like saying you're not here, but you are. So those are like issues around the value of truth in a way. Like it's the way we speak and the relationship between our truth, our speech, intention, and actions. And then I think, like in terms of the like informed consent, things like needing to be deferred or abstained from are often, for Indigenous people, a lot about, informed consent. So
Looks like we lost.
Sorry, what's the last thing you heard me say just before it cut out?
You froze there for just a quick second.
Okay, so I guess like, the deferral is like, is part of consent, and abstaining is part of consent as well, right? So I mean, they're sort of like larger consent issues. So I think it's good, that it came up, and that, because consent is obviously really key. And then that's all I really have to say, really, is just informed consent, and then the value of like, truth and intention and action. And in a traditional sense, truth is connected to action and speech. So, like, I just wanted to say that, just underscoring the consent part about why, deferral and abstaining is like, it's like tied to consent. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Christine. Councillor Layton?
Yes, Jonathan, I shot you over a potential wording for Andrea's motion that would ensure that it comes back, and that's to receive the presentation and with instructions for the city clerk to bring forward a discussion on the terms of reference, specifically as it relates to abstentions. And Andrea, I took the liberty of also adding in the issue of quorum too, because we may as well, if we're going to have a discussion on the terms of reference, let's do it at once rather than little one-offs. Jonathan, I just wasn't sure if it was entirely in order the way I wrote it.
While Jonathan pulls that together, I just want to make a quick note that there are some members who have let us know that they do have hard stops today. I believe that one of our presenters actually won't be able to present at this point because they are getting ready to leave the meeting. And so I think that we are looking to have a hard stop about 12:30 to let folks get back to their days and other obligations, which means we will have to vote to defer some of the agenda items, but I just wanted to fill you guys in on that piece. And Jonathan, do you have a response for Councillor Layton? I can't see you.
Madam Chair, we are looking at the motion provided by Councillor Layton. We'll work on it and advise.
Thank you so much. So in the meantime, there was a motion on the floor to receive the item. All in favor, please raise your hand. Oh, Sylvia.
Co-chair, just as a procedural note, a motion to receive indicates take no action. So if this, if the committee is to consider a motion to amend, which would be the content of what Councillor Layton said, I would perhaps recommend just standing this item down and returning to it to move the motion to amend.
Once the motion. Great, thank you so much. So Jonathan, you can let us know when the motion is ready and we'll move on to the next item until that's prepared. Oh, Steve?
Yeah, before we move on, I just wanted to thank the city staff who gave us this little overview today. You know, this is I think my third term now being on the Aboriginal Affairs Committee, and I know I've been asking for a couple of years for an orientation on the procedures, terms of reference. This is my first time ever seeing our terms of reference. And, you know, I've been on the committee for, like I said, 3 terms. So thank you to our chairs for, you know, hearing my past requests for this sort of orientation. And thank you to the city staff for presenting and sharing with us. I'm pleased that people are interested in modifying the terms of reference. And I look forward to that rich discussion in the future. So, you know, again, thanks to everybody.
Thank you, Steve. So I'll pass it to Brian to introduce our next item, being very mindful that we are on a time crunch for this and that there still be some time to defer some items that we'll need voting on from the membership. So we will aim to end around 12:30, but hopefully folks can stay on if you can, just so we can get through those motions to defer and hear the presentation in entirety. Those of you that do have to leave, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Pam, and thank you, Steve, for bringing that up. You know, it is kind of like reading the instruction manual before operating heavy machinery, but it is very important that we're all on the same page in terms of how this is all supposed to operate. I feel like my grasp is rickety at best, but I appreciate that, Steve. So as Pam was saying, we will run into some time issues, but I hope that we'll be able to receive at least hear the entire presentation for item AA 15.5, the Reconciliation Action Plan. City Manager Chris Murray and Selena Young, Director, Indigenous Affairs Office, will give a presentation to the committee. When you're ready.
So I will begin, and first of all, thank you very much, committee, for giving me a few seconds here to introduce the Reconciliation Action Plan. If you will, this has been very informative, I must say, in listening to all of you and the last debate and the importance of this committee, and especially the new members, which we want to, of course, welcome and support their journey as they help this committee and this city move in a better direction. So really quickly, just some personal information so you know kind of who I am. I am a 9th generation settler on my mother's side. Yvonne Gautreau's family land came from France in 1634 to what is now Nova Scotia. I am first generation on my father's side. My dad, Joseph Murray, is from Northern Ireland. Unlike Councillor Layton, I'm pretty certain I don't have any Confederation ties, directly or indirectly, but I do believe that my family in a number of different ways have contributed to the colonial system that is challenging everyone. And I have biases. I am obviously a white male. I'm aware of certain biases, other biases, as I commit to lifelong learning. I will be made informed of, and I'll do everything I can to address. From an experience standpoint, my professional background is urban planning. The actual work I focused on was environmental planning, and I spent a lot of time doing infrastructure. So mostly roads and transit is really the first dozen or so years of my career. It was through that I actually was introduced to two people representing the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. One was an elder, the other was a Indigenous lawyer, who I worked with on a major project that I was in charge of in Hamilton that resulted in 8 agreements with the Confederacy. They ranged from everything from archaeology to burials, to the handling of artifacts, to medicine plants, to joint stewardship of the valley, as well as as an Indigenous restoration business that was created at Ohsweken. And so it was really through that experience that I had what I can easily say the most profound growth in my professional and personal life. What I learned was the understanding of what a relationship is. And a relationship is first grounded in respect. And then from there, it evolves through trust. And trust is a long journey. And then ultimately, maybe friendship. And so respect and trust is going to be critically important. And the other thing that I was made aware of was certainly the notion or the idea of government to government relationships, and the two-row wampum, understanding that we are in separate canoes traveling in parallel, and there has to be that respect amongst ourselves. So that was very informative to me. It's the city manager of the city of Toronto. I first came here and I talked about what public service really is, and that is it's all about earning people's trust and confidence. And so that's really important to this conversation, because there is a long history where there isn't trust and there isn't confidence in government for a whole number of very obvious and critical reasons. And so the reconciliation action plan is such an important milestone in a relationship. And as I sit here and I listen to all of you, some of you who I talk to on a regular basis, some of you I've never met, have varying degrees of experience working with the city. Some are obviously brand new. So what information we're going to share today, for some of you, you have a deep understanding, and some of you don't. And I think, in the idea that, if we want to go far together, we need to work with each other. And so what I think Selena is going to present is certainly the culmination of a lot of work, not just by staff, but by some, not all of you. And I think, for us to build that relationship and have a document that we're proud of, it's important that we present, where we are today. And I want to work with you. And as I say, I mean, technically within the organization, I am, my title is city manager, which the way I always see it is that I am the most senior public servant. I'm a public servant, and by the true meaning of the word public and servant. And so I look at this as one of those events that takes place in your lives and certainly in mine, that is just that important to get this right, to be able to move forward together. and to deal with a long colonial history that has not served this group and the families that you represent well. So with that, I want us to go through the presentation, inform you as to what we've learned along the way, and receive some of your comments. But we need to make sure that this sits well with you. So if it takes a bit of time for us to do that, I think we should afford that time. This is an important committee. This is an important document. And so maybe with that, if I can turn the floor over to Selena, she'll take you through what it is that we have in mind. But of course, look forward to your comments and consideration. Thanks.
Chris, thank you. Francis, thank you for opening us up, your words, your wisdom, speaking us off in such a good way. And that has flown through the conversation as I've been listening intently. As Chris was just mentioning about the importance of ensuring you have time, I heard some comments earlier, previous presentation, about having time, the significance of this and needing time. So we are able to have shifted our timing with what we're thinking of for taking the Reconciliation Action Plan forward to City Council. And so this would be new information for you, even those of you that have spent lots of time working on the Reconciliation Action Plan. The shifting of time is we are hoping to take it in the spring. So that would mean a March 30th Executive Committee meeting and an April 6th, 7th City Council meeting. So the information that we're sharing today is so you have information. And that we now have time to have more conversations and more dialogue as a group, as a committee, as individuals, as community members. So I know.
Selena, sorry to interrupt. Yeah. Just before you continue, perhaps you can move a little closer to your computer. Your audio is just a bit choppy, and I know folks really want to hear what you're going to share.
Will do. Thank you, Marcy, Pamela. Okay, I'm just going to share the presentation. Give me 1 second here. Okay. So a little bit of an overview, and I'll do a sound check. Thumbs up. Okay, thank you, Pamela. So the city needs a plan to advance truth, justice, and reconciliation. We need a way to make meaningful actions and be held accountable for those actions, accountable by community, by leaders like yourselves that are influencing and making decisions across the city for our communities. Without a plan, we will, and we are doing some things as a city, but they aren't enough. We have to be bolder and we have to do more. We also know the Reconciliation Action Plan actions within the need for truth, justice, and reconciliation has gained increased significance and importance during the pandemic, given the huge economic and health impacts that COVID has had on First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities. Share just two more things that I think are important in this overview of the Reconciliation Action Plan. I describe the RAP, or the Reconciliation Action Plan, as a basket. I know baskets are significant in my family and my culture, and I believe that is true for many of your cultures as well. So think of a basket as weaving together what the city is currently doing with and for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis in Toronto. Also, better connecting what we are doing in a really large organization, 37,000 staff at the City of Toronto. And in that basket are new strands being woven in for the work that we must do, the new actions we must take with community. Also critical is that this basket is a living document. It is filled with spirit, and as such, we need to care for it constantly. We need to be able to listen to Indigenous leaders like yourselves, Indigenous communities, and learn and unlearn and adjust as needed. And that's the concept and the significance of the living document. So while we have to start somewhere, this action plan is not carved in stone. never to be changed. It's meant to change as the trust builds and as we learn more and hear more from the community. Indigenous peoples, we've been telling our stories, our ancestors, our communities have been telling our stories and sharing our realities in numerous reports for decades. Survivors and families have gone through incredibly painful processes to share those stories and give us advice as government. Those voices, that advice has informed the Reconciliation Action Plan. I also want to emphasize the work done by the Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee in previous terms of council. Some of those leaders and visionaries are still members of today's committee from them today. You are instrumental in getting the city to endorse the Statement of Commitment for Aboriginal Peoples almost 12 years ago. One of those statements, there's 8 statements, and one of them commits the city to establishing an action plan. And here we are. Values and guiding principles. I won't spend too much time on this slide. These are the key values that'll guide the work. I think all of these will be in your hearts and minds as Indigenous peoples. But the Toronto Public Service, those 37,000 staff at the city, we all have to ground ourselves in these values and guiding principles. And some of these will be new for some of those 37,000 staff. I think especially of decolonizing and power sharing. But in order to do this work, in order to implement the actions, these are the values that we have to live by day to day as public servants. Give you a sense of the more recent development of the action plan. Concerted efforts started about 3 years ago when the office was created, when the Indigenous Affairs Office was created. We hired an Indigenous consultant, external facilitator, strategist, held a number of one-on-one conversations with Indigenous leaders in Toronto. A number of you are here. There was workshops, there was community conversations, community sharing circles, all with an intent to hear from community, from Indigenous leaders, organizations about what the city had done, hadn't done, should do, could do. All of that has informed where we are with the action plan. We were able to take a lot of what we heard, and we had an earlier draft that some of you would have seen. And we took that earlier draft to Indigenous leaders at the Toronto Aboriginal Support Services Council. And we heard loud and clear, rightfully so, that we missed the mark with that draft. We weren't focused on actions in that previous draft, and we certainly weren't bold enough. And we need to be bold in support of Indigenous self-determination, Indigenous rights, Indigenous communities, needs, and interests. So while trying to navigate the pandemic in 2022, after getting that advice, that direction, we started from scratch. We wrote the action plan, and that's what we have today. Also important to note, there's city divisions, many city divisions, folks across the city, working with Indigenous organizations, working with First Nations and Inuit and Métis in the community. All of that work has also informed the action plan. We've been listening and adjusting the action plan draft as we hear more and more from community. So in a way, it's already a living document. We're already realizing it as such. So the next 2 slides give you that overview of the action plan, 29 actions over 5 themes to me. So on the first slide, we've got 3 of those themes: restoring truth, righting relations, and sharing power, and justice. You can't have truth, we can't get to justice and reconciliation without starting with the truth. So that's a very important piece. Part of the work around restoring truth is having every city division do what we're calling a reconciliation audit. So looking at their policies, practices, procedures, the way they're working with Indigenous communities or not, and how do we change that? How do we decolonize those processes, work in a better way? Of course, 37,000 staff, huge opportunity for education, learning and development. So that's part of this. What we heard directly from the Métis community in Toronto was the need to better understand the Métis history in Toronto, specifically the role the city played in sending troops, sending militia to fight the Métis in the resistance in the 1880s. So in addition to an apology from the city and their role in contributing and sending those troops, also an opportunity for education campaigns to better understand how the impact of something in 1880, in the 1880s, influenced the community, the Métis community that is today. Writing relations and sharing power, really important for those relationships, as you heard Chris talk about. Enhancing Indigenous civic engagement. You're part of that, but we need to do more. There needs to be more First Nations, Inuit, and Métis voices influencing decisions at the city. So it's wonderful that we have this committee, but there's many more committees. There's many more ways that Indigenous folks can influence decisions. And of course, we have a role to play in working with Indigenous organizations and communities to advocate at the other levels of government. And Chris, the mayor, are already starting to do some of that. Not surprising, the majority of actions in the action plan fall under the theme of justice. Everything from addressing racism and community safety. Think of the crisis response pilot some of you are involved in. Health and well-being, deeply affordable housing for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis in the city. A concerted effort for addressing the calls for justice for the murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls and two-spirited community members. This is where there's work on land stewardship, access to land and water, foods and medicines. And that is also part of placemaking, placekeeping. We have great opportunities to celebrate Indigenous arts and culture and revitalize Indigenous languages, all part of the justice. Can't do actions, we can't do this without fiscal supports, without dollars. So providing sustainable financial supports for reconciliation is critical. There's opportunities for the city to bolster Indigenous economic development and acknowledging that as such a large organization, the city has an opportunity to support prosperity by doing more, doing better to recruit and retain Indigenous talent in the city. There are some specific actions for the Indigenous Affairs Office. I'll emphasize the accountability processes. So working with community to figure out what those are. We haven't dictated what they are. We want to hear from you and others how we make sure the city is accountable to community. What does it mean? What's the process for the living document? How are we monitoring? How are we sharing back information with community? How are we evaluating if we've reached a goal or haven't? So that's an important piece. I'll touch on, there's a couple of slides here that give recent feedback from community engagement sessions. So we held a number of sessions and shared the actions with community in the fall, September, October, November. And we heard, these are quotes from participants in those sessions. Just to highlight these two slides, how we finished. The last question we asked participants in those sessions in the fall is, imagine it's 10 years from now. What do you hope to see changed for Indigenous communities and Indigenous peoples in Toronto? And this gives you a sampling of what we heard, the hopes and dreams for community members 10 years down the road when these actions have been implemented. Just a couple of slides on next steps. I've talked about the shift in timing. We go to executive committee, we go to council. The plan for that, March 30th, April 6th, 7th. When, as city staff, you've heard a little bit about this in previous presentations, we take materials to executive and ultimately council to get advice, to get the direct, from council. So we would take forward a staff report. The action plan would be appended to that report, as well as a proposed work plan for how to start implementing this in a good way. So this is just to give you a sense of things that we would include in that staff report. helping mayor and council, city council better understand the significance of this work and why they need to support it. The values guiding the work, description of the actions. We also include information about what's happening elsewhere in other cities and municipalities. Recommendations go into the report, and this is the way that we as city staff, as you heard in a previous presentation, then get directed to start to implement the good work. And so this is to give you a sense of the intent, how we see some of the recommendations rolling out in the future. And then last and certainly not least is the budget. The city does need additional funds in order to start to implement this action plan in a good, should it be approved. So this slide shows you an overview of the new ask, the new requests in 2022. And that budget process was just launched yesterday. So this was one of the additions to the deck that we couldn't include until that budget process was launched yesterday. So we're asking for funds specifically, well, the total is about 3.4 million of new funds. A third of that is to support the Indigenous funding framework. Unfortunately, we won't see a presentation on that today, but you do have the materials, and that's money going directly to incredible Indigenous organizations in the city, working with community frontline work. Many of you are leading those organizations doing that work. So that's a third of the new ask is to supplement the Indigenous funding framework. There's efforts around Indigenous learning and education, supporting Indigenous staff's mental health and well-being, supporting economic development in the Indigenous Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and supporting placekeeping, placemaking work and engagement work that we know our parks colleagues are doing heavily given the significance of land and water. And I tried to keep, I'm sorry, that was speedy, but it's meant to be an overview. This doesn't need to be, certainly won't be the only time we're talking, but hopefully that gives you a sense of where we're at and the important timing and budget pieces as we go.
Hi, Selena. Is that to say that that's the end of the presentation, or is it Chris's? I see Chris popping on again.
No, sorry, Brian, I'm just here to answer any questions or hear any comments that people have to make.
So the concern, I see you, Steve. Just one second. The concern at this point, obviously, is that this is going to be, or deserves to be, and needs to be a very well thought out and expanded discussion. I don't know that we're going to be able to do that. I know that people are going to have to leave. I know that personally I have to leave, and I believe Pam does as well. What I'm hoping we'll be able to do, and I hope that the committee sees it this way as well, is that we will defer the discussion of this item, any further discussion of this item, to the next meeting. I know that we still have to vote on the last meeting, last motion, provided Councillor Layton's motion is up and available, which I'm sure it will be. And that way we still have time to defer the remaining items and have Larry Frost close us out in a good way. So if I can have, I'm going to put forward the motion to defer this item. Can I have a show of hands? In favor? Yay. Okay, excellent. I appreciate it, everyone. It's amazing how little you can get done in 3 hours, I suppose. And to go back to item 4 then, clerks, is the motion ready?
Just give us 1 more minute, Chair, please.
And I totally, sorry, I just wanted to thank Chris and Selena as well for their presentation. It's appreciated. Go ahead, Mike, you were going to say?
If I just could on a, let's call it a point of order. Item AA 15.7, and this is the proposed official naming of a recreational center. I am told that if we don't adopt it today, that it's not able to get renamed within this term of council for some reason. I was not aware of the urgency until about 15 minutes ago when the local councillor texted me saying everyone's in a bit of a jam. Do we still have staff for this item on the call, and can they advise if that's the case or not? Looking for you, Parks and Rec.
Good afternoon. It's Sandra Rodriguez from Parks, Forestry and Recreation. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
With regards to this item, we know that there's been a lot of work and there is, people would like to have the name confirmed. We were planning on going to North York Community Council in February. But in terms of the facility, will actually not be completed until the end of the year. So we could come back to the committee, to the next meeting.
Okay, thank you, Sandra.
Thank you for checking in on that, Mike. It was my understanding that could also be moved. So yeah, we're just waiting on clerks for Councillor Layton's motion.
Just a question.
Francis.
Just a question. Does that mean, Sandra, that this will be held up at all? Or will it move forward? Is there the chance to move it forward at the next meeting? Or is it held up till the end of the year?
I'm assuming that this item would be deferred to the next advisory committee, which I think is scheduled in March. We'll have to go back and look at our timelines based on the committee's decisions.
Can I say, we'll probably be no wiser in March than we are right now. I'm judging from the look of the intelligent faces in this circle. I did have the report. I did read through the report. I am in favor of the report. And I'd like to see it go through on its merit, just on the report, and that we've all had an opportunity to read it, and that this is vitally important to developing, taking our place in Toronto, and it's just another opportunity. So I don't want to defer it. I want this to go forward, and I think it has merit and it should go forward. Now, Sandra, I expect you back here at our next meeting to tell us what a wonderful job and explain the whole business to us. But I think you need the endorsement from this committee to move forward.
I echo what Francis said. I did read the report too, Sandra, and I liked it. So I too, with Francis, agree with the report. Lara here. Thank you.
I guess I saw your hand too.
Yeah, likewise. In fact, I would move that we approve the recommendations or whatever the appropriate form is contained in the presentation.
But I wanted to come back and talk about it next meeting.
Yeah, that's fine.
Could you do that?
Okay, so clerks, if you can just please advise if we're able to pass the motion to receive the item, even though it's not being presented, and still have them return next week to have a discussion on the item.
I don't want to just receive it. I want to pass it.
Exactly.
We'll need some wording for a motion on that. Correct, Jonathan?
Pamela, it's Andrea. I also want to make sure that I'm supporting that, and I'm really pleased that we're acknowledging, the Wyandotte, in terms of this this community that we're all a part of too as well. So I too really appreciate the report, and would like to support.
See what happens when we get the information ahead of time?
Okay, so a motion to approve and fully endorse the renaming in item, forgive me, 15.7.
Madam
Pronounce
Chair,
it.
Yes.
Madam Chair, it's Jonathan. On
Hi,
item
Jonathan.
number 7, the item before the committee is a presentation. Uh, uh, there's no recommendations before the committee. I heard Francis suggested that she wanted to see this again at the next meeting. If that's the wish of the committee can defer the item to the next meeting so that staff can bring it back and make their presentation to the committee.
So I think the desire is not to ignore the timeline and to support the presentation and the renaming and have that verbalized somehow. Can you advise on how we could best do that, Jonathan?
I think I would defer it to staff.
Hi, it's Sandra here again. I'm wondering whether there can be a motion of support for the proposal, and I see Councillor Layton, who may have a better idea. Councillor Layton?
I think Sandra, you got it right there, that we propose a motion. I think I've heard it from now 6 members that the Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee express its support for the name and the process that went into selecting it, and request Parks, Forestry, and Recreation staff come to the next PFR meeting to make the presentation.
That's the motion on the floor. All in favor?
Sorry, my apologies to interrupt. Councillor Layton, could you please repeat that? Expresses support for the name. Request that I would really like to get this into writing and display
Sure.
it before we vote.
So we express the AAC expresses support for the name and request the Parks, Forestry, and Recreation staff return to the next AAC meeting to provide a presentation. And it can be the exact same presentation.
This is Andrea. Could I ask somebody to pronounce that? It's quite an interesting name.
It's not going to be me.
Pronounce that, please. Beautiful.
The I can try to pronounce the name, Ethennonnhawahstihnen. And actually the local councillor from Ward 17, Councillor Carroll, on one of the slides, there is actually a link to a video that has been produced because there was an adjacent park and local street that has already named, that has that name. And so there's a bit of, she put out a video just to educate on the name and the significance of the site. I want to draw attention to that for the committee. And I'm looking forward to presenting at the March meeting.
Okay, so I think we have a number of motions on the floor in regards to several items. So I'll ask the clerks to start posting those. We will go through each one and cast our vote.
Madam Chair, we will display the motion momentarily. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So the first motion is that the Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee express its support for the name and request Parks, Forestry and Recreation to return to the next meeting of the committee to give a presentation. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries.
And so now we're waiting on the motion from Councillor Layton for the previous item, correct?
Yes, and then to defer.
If I could, I believe I was trying to capture what Andrea had said, and so I'm like, I think it's probably more appropriate for her to have carriage over the motion. I plan on supporting it, but if it's all the same, my name doesn't need to be there on that.
The Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee recommends that the Executive Committee request the City Clerk and the City Manager to include a discussion on the terms of reference at the main meeting of the Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee meeting, including advice from the City Solicitor on the possibility of abstentions from votes and potential changes to the quorum for meetings. Andrea, do you feel that this motion accurately captures what you were trying to get across to the table?
No, but I think it actually reflects the position being advanced by Mike, and I would support that. So Michael, you would advance it, I'll support it.
So just one quick question was it March or May is the next meeting, City
March.
Clerk? So I believe the motion said May. So if we can make that edit. And Councillor Layton, are you okay with having this be your motion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So co-chairs, and I can perhaps let the councillor speak to this, but the date in there, it's just to line up with the meetings of the executive committee, just to make the timeline feasible. With the budget process, March wouldn't be feasible with for the request to go to executive committee.
Do we have to make the request to executive committee?
I just want to jump in there that if we're expecting to have a fulsome discussion of the reconciliation action plan in March, then this might end up getting pushed to May anyway.
Just to answer the Councillor Layton's question about it going to executive committee. So as per the simplified rules of procedure, the advisory body may provide advice, but it cannot direct staff without the endorsement of a standing committee. And so as this is a request for staff and the city solicitor, the request would appropriately need to be authorized by the executive committee.
Could we just take out the request of staff and just we ask the clerk to bring the item of the terms of reference back to the committee, and then we can just ask staff to attend and give us advice? Oh.
Yeah, I think that point's important because I think what we were looking for is more conversation on the matter as opposed to maybe specific directions or requests of staff, but more the desire to have another conversation as a committee on the item to perhaps then decipher specific next steps. So I think that slight edit may help. Not sure if others agree.
I think it does, Pam. It allows us to slide into the next steps easier. We'll have the discussion first, and then we'll take it under advisement at that point.
So the advice I could give is for the advisory committee to make this a motion, I would suggest this would need to go through executive committee. Given the way that agenda items can make their way onto a committee agenda, if you remember back to those slides. So we have city officials A city official could take it upon themselves to bring this item back to the next committee. So this could be a conversation between the co-chairs and the program staff in the creation of an item without going through the moving a motion at this point.
Francis?
Could we just defer it to another meeting so that we can discuss it, and then that would that cover it?
I think in the end, it's the specifics of my motion that are making this problematic. If we receive the item and request Brian and Pam bring it to the next, put it on the agenda of the next meeting, that's what Sylvia is suggesting, is the easiest, simplest way to get it on in March. And I would agree. I'll withdraw my motion and move receipt, and thank Brian and Pamela in advance for putting it on the agenda for us.
All right, so we have a motion.
Okay. So co-chairs, if I may ask you to take a vote on Councillor Layton's motion to withdraw, and then next will be the motion to receive the item.
All in favor for withdrawal of that motion? Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. And so are we having a motion now to receive the item? Sylvia? Yes. Okay, so we're going back to that item, which, forgive me, I don't remember what number it was. But we are, a motion is on the floor to receive item 15.4, process and simplified rules and procedure. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you so much. And Brian and I will coordinate some of the agenda items moving forward. Notes have been taken on that. So we have a few more motions to get through just to defer the remaining agenda items. Thank you all for keeping connected with us. The consideration of the item to be deferred until March 8th, 2022 meeting of the Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee for item 15.6. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you so much. For the next item. For item 15.8, the consideration of the item to be deferred until March 8th, 2022 meeting of the Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. And is that all of them, Jonathan?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. We did it.
Angus has a point here. Pam, sorry to jump in.
What did we do with 15.5? Can you refresh my memory? Did we pass a motion on that?
Oh, we need that motion still, Jonathan.
Right. And so if I may, if the motion is to receive the presentation, and presumably we'll have a full discussion, I just want to know that we will have the reconciliation action plan posted on the website well in advance of the meeting, so that we know what it is that we're presumably being asked to endorse, and not getting updates the night before, well in advance.
Noted.
Can we have that assurance?
Selena?
Definitely, I guess that was part of the shifting in timing that we took, so that we could do exactly just that. And we shouldn't be faced with budget launch and timing pressures there. So yeah, no problem at all. That is exactly what we will do.
Okay, the actual plan that's being asked that we're being asked to endorse. Thank you.
So, Steve?
Yeah, I'd like to add, this is the first time for this reconciliation action plan we've never seen any details on the budget. Can we get details on the budget coupled with the actual verbiage of the reconciliation action plan and notes letting us know what the budget items are for and the intent of those budget items? Because I don't want to see anything last minute and then we be expected to endorse it. So can you ensure that the budget is also included?
Yeah. So you have the one budget slide already that gives you an overview, and the details I think that you're asking for. Yes.
Right. So much like the other item, I think it was 4, we will vote to receive
Madam Chair,
item 5 with
Madam Chair,
yes, Jonathan, sorry.
I believe the committee has voted on item number 5 earlier, moved by Brian to defer the item to the next meeting.
Did we vote on it? Feels so long ago. Okay, then Angus, does that answer your question?
That answers my question about what we did with it, and we can rely on the assurance that we'll get the full plan well in advance with no updates. Great, thank you.
Fantastic. So I believe that is all of our motions, and that concludes our business for today. And so I would like to have a closing blessing from Larry Cross.
Okay, everyone, wasn't that a good meeting? Man, I felt the unity. I felt the passion, really good. So I want to say, Creator, thank you for our new members, which I'm so glad to see. And Cynthia Bell is one I know, and others, thank you so much. And for opening our hearts to this advisory committee, as we ask you to help us all to follow our sacred teachings. So important that we always trust and respect each other. That's so important for each other while we are on our individual journeys of coming together as a unified team. I'm seeing more of us become unified, and that's so it hits my heart and my spirit. So I thank you for that. I say miigwech to everybody. Let's continue the good work for our people in urban setting of Toronto. Miigwech, thank you.
Miigwech, Larry. And thank you to everyone here today, members, staff, presenters. That concludes our business, and I hope you all have a great weekend, and the meeting is now adjourned.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Hoy on again.
Kamapi.
Yeah.